Right then, members, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Busy agenda for today. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Have we got any apologies for absence?
Yep.
We've got Pat Antcliffe, Michael Durrant and Stephen Reid noted already. Have anybody else got any to suggest?
Yeah, Councillor Stephen Reid.
Councillor Stephen Reid.
Yep.
Tony?
Yeah, I've got Councillor Clegg, Councillor Durrant, Councillor Morley and Christine Smith.
Councillor Dale?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Tony?
Oh, I've gone through it, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Councillor Clegg.
No, just switch your mic off, that's all. That's good. Come on.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so in addition to those reference, we've got Councillor Peter Elliott, Carolyn Rennick, Michelle Emmons and Kevin Tate.
And Andy Burnham. Don't you start.
What about Suella Braverman?
Yeah, and Suella Braverman.
You've touched us all point.
Right, item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Members and their partners with a council tenancy via Ricknold Homes Limited must register any pecuniary interest, though this usually doesn't prevent participation in item 7 if their interest is similar to other taxpayers or tenants. Please also declare if you have a disclosable pecuniary interest and a dispensable dispensation to participate in any item. Are there any, that was easy to say, weren't it? Are there any declarations? Okay, Councillor Gillett.
Yes, Chair. I have a DPI on item 7 as a member of the Vicknell Board, but I do have a dispensation to participate, including speaking and voting, if I so choose.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thacker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, same declaration for item 7 as a member of Vicknell Board, but I haven't got a dispensation, so I'll be withdrawing from the meeting at that time.
Councillor Lacey.
Yes, Chair. I'm declaring that I'm a tenant of Ricknold Homes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 7. As a customer of Ricknold Homes has declared in my interest.
And Councillor Pam Munley.
Ricknold Homes.
Okay, thank you, members. Right, item 3 on the agenda. Minutes of the council meeting held on the 1st of December. Are members content to approve these are a correct record? As we move it?
I'm a vote.
Second.
Moved and second. We'll just have a show of hands on that, please. Right, that's that. Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to my announcements. You'll be pleased to hear that I only have a few announcements today, so I'll be fairly brief. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first meeting of the new year. Over December, I did attend a number of Christmas carol concerts throughout the county, and they were thoroughly enjoyable to get you in the Christmas spirit, but not so sure I'll be invited back after they heard my singing voice. In January, as I expected, it's very quiet, but this coming weekend I will be attending Derbyshire Amateur Swimming Association Gala at Moor Lane, Derby, where hopefully I'll be able to see some swimming stars of the future coming through. Finally, on a more serious note, I would just like to say that tomorrow is Holocaust Remembrance Day. This council recently reaffirmed its commitment to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and its commitment to fight anti-Semitism and all forms of racism. A review of the Community Scrutiny Committee was also undertaken, and I am pleased to announce that in recognition the chair of that committee, Councillor Durrant, has been personally invited to the memorial service tomorrow by Derbyshire Jewish community. I would ask all members who cannot attend the service tomorrow to just take a moment to reflect on what was one of humanity's darkest ever chapters. That concludes my announcements, so let's go on to the main business. Item 5 on the agenda is over to you, Councillor Barker, for your update.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit late for Happy New Year, isn't it? I'm not going to do that. Well, I've just done it. Bugger. But I'd like to start today with just keeping everybody up to speed on LGR and where we're at with that. I'll take it as read, as everybody will know where we are in Derbyshire, and that is there's 4 versions been put in of the One Derbyshire 2 Council proposal. Alongside these, there's the County Council proposal of a single county-wide unitary. The next big milestones, and I know you've been having meetings, haven't you, Lee, and keeping up to speed on all this. The government will now consult nationally on all the Derbyshire proposals, including ours. The consultation is expected to launch in early February and will run for about 7 weeks. Responses will be via the government citizen space platform, and I think there will be paper options for people to fill in. And I know our communications and engagement group for LGR is preparing consistent messaging, stakeholder lists and compliant publicity arrangements, so that we're all saying same thing, all the districts and boroughs and the city. Following the consultation, I think the next big milestone is a decision from government on which, if any, I think that's a thing, model LGR is selected for Derbyshire. This is expected in late spring or early summer. And if the model is approved, I think this is what we need to know, the next step will be laying of a structural change order that's in Parliament, that's a legal instrument that will trigger transition. And this sets out when vesting day will be. That's the date when the new councils come into being, which councils are abolished and created. There'll be transfer of assets, liabilities, functions and staff, electoral arrangements, including shadow authority elections, governance arrangements for the transition, which there's a lot of work to do there. However, while we await that decision, we can't do nothing, and I know all the groups are still meeting, Jane, aren't they, and Matt and Lee, because we can't stand still, we can't wait for that decision to then start doing things. So our focus here is to do some non-abortive, just preparatory, easy for me to say, that adds value to whichever model that the government decides. I will continue to keep you all updated as we progress through the next 6 months. Also, I think the offer is there if anyone wants to talk to either myself or Lee on LGR or any other matters, the offer's there. I've continued to chair the Strategic Leaders Board, I think, which is now functioning as it should, after the Barry Lewis incident, which we'll not dwell on. This will help coordinate all the Derbyshire Council's relationship with EMCA. Also, last week, the Post Office announced that it was closing the branch in Pilsley at very short notice. And given the effect I think this will have on the people in that community, I have written to the Post Office offering this council support in trying to reinstate that facility in that community. On other matters, as we begin a new year, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the one that we've just had. I'm sure you'll all be aware of most of what I'm going to say, seeing as I'll have watched my leaders video before Christmas. I'm sure, are you? No, I didn't think so. It's only 21, and I'm watched 17, am I? Supporting our local economy has remained a priority. Our food and drink trail now features over 40 businesses, offering a fantastic showcase of the district producers. We have been out and about across the district, delivering customer service sessions, helping residents with face-to-face transactions and building digital confidence. Our community action grants continue to make a difference, I think we've got out the 100th grant recently. I'm still interested in this Pig Pals, what it does, but it's a group supporting mental health and people with mental health issues. We have remained firm in tackling crime and environmental offences. We've successfully prosecuted people for fly tipping, and there's been some closure orders in Arkwright and Tuckton. Working with Rick Newell, I think our housing stock has achieved C1, that's the C1 accreditation. That's the highest possible classification, and I think it's a rare achievement. On leisure and well-being, the opening of Claycross Active has been a standout moment, and it's truly, I think, a once-in-a-generation milestone. It's got over 3,000 members already enjoying the facility, and I think it's something we all should be proud of, and I know the previous administration were pushing that through as well, which is great. I'm a member, but I've still not been, Alex. I've still not been. It's like £20 a month I'm not getting back, isn't it? Together with other centres, including Drongfield Active, shortlisted for the National APSI Award, we continue to raise standards. There's much more we can say and do, but I think we will report back through all the performance mechanisms for people to keep up to speed on all that. And I'd like to thank everybody in this chamber for the commitment and perseverance throughout what I think has been a very demanding year. Not as demanding as COVID, Alex, I'll give you that, but there's been a lot of work in the background, hasn't there? So I look forward to continue to work together and keep North East Derbyshire a great place to live and work. Cheers, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Right, item 6, we have no public questions today, so we'll move on to the next item. Item 7, medium-term financial plan 25-26 stroke 29-30. Financial plan. As usual, and as required by law, the vote on this item will be a recorded vote. We will be using the electronic voting system, and please make sure you record your vote by pressing the relevant button on the screen of your microphone unit at the relevant time. We'll split the recommendation and take 2 votes, one on the general fund and one on the HRA. Finally, I would like to remind everyone that under section 106 of the Local Government Act 1992, a councillor must not vote on any matter relating to the council's budget or council tax if they are 2 months or more in arrears with their council tax. I'll now ask the Director of Finance and Resources to introduce this item. So over to you, Jane. Is it over to you first, Pat?
Yes, I think it's me first, isn't it?
I thought Jane was giving her presentation first. Jane's giving her presentation first, Pat.
Is she? Right.
Yeah.
Went okay at rehearsal.
It did, didn't it?
Can't we get like to
Right, we're on. Excellent. Good, good, good. Can't believe it's a year since I did this last time. I feel like it was only 5 minutes ago since I was stood here last time. Can I have the screen flipped over, please, to the presentation? On the screens? Oh, not what I've got on my screen. Oh. Thought it did it automatically. Sorry about this. It will be worth it, I promise. Thank you, Amy.
We've all seen it anyway, Jane.
I think everybody has seen it, actually, yeah. We're on. Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for that. So for those of you who haven't seen it, you're in for a treat. For those of you who have, apologies. These slides are quite similar to the ones that a lot of you engaged with throughout the process that we've just been through in terms of engagement. And I'm just going to take you through before Councillor Kerry introduces the report. So we're going to have a little look at the General Fund, we're going to look at the HRA, and we're going to look at the Capital Programme. In terms of the MTFP, you've got that in your pack. The appendices provide the snapshot data. Of course, there's an awful lot of detail and data sits behind those papers. So if there's anything specific that anybody wants to discuss, and I know we discussed quite a lot of that stuff in scrutiny, but if there's anything anybody does want to discuss, please let me know. Me and my team will be more than happy to spend that time and go through that detail with you. So, General Fund update. The big highlight this year is that the long-awaited funding reforms have finally arrived. It is the most significant distribution of funding for the last 25 years, and it's been built into the settlement for 26-27. It's a multi-year settlement, so it's for 3 years, 26-7 onwards, and that provides real certainty to the MTFP. When you're building a 4-year forecast, it's incredibly difficult to do that when you've only got certainty over 1 year. So to have a 3-year certainty over settlement, over financing and funding, it is a real benefit. So in terms of the funding reforms and what's in the financial statement, major changes to the major funding formula. There's a really strong link to levels of deprivation and population within the revised formula. New burdens funding has been rolled into the main funding formula. Baseline for business rates, which I'll talk about in a few slides' time, has been reset in full. The new homes bonus grant has now been abolished, and several grant pots have been amalgamated, including homelessness, rough sleeping and temporary accommodation. Transitional funding has been provided, and that includes what's known as the minimum funding floor. The idea behind that is it's to protect councils from the full impact of the funding changes. Whenever you make a change to a redistributive system, you have winners and you have losers. The idea behind the funding reform, the minimum funding floor, is to make sure that those losers get a bit of a softer landing. And then a bit of a surprise, recovery grant allocations were preserved at 25-26 levels. This was a little bit of a surprise to us when the settlement came out just before Christmas, because all the grants were being rolled in. So I was a little surprised that that's still there, but, you know, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, we'll take that funding benefit. So in terms of revenue support grant and transitional protection, since 2013, the needs formula, the government's need formula, has assumed that we need very little additional financial support. So the RSG that we've actually been paid over the past 10 years has been minimal. Just to give you an example, we had £160,000 paid in 2025. The Fair Funding Review and the business rates reset significantly changes that picture for us. The transitional protections in place, as I've just said, to ensure that we don't drop below a minimum funding for. And for those that get a transitional payment, that will be paid over the 3 years of the settlement. You'll see on the next slide that we do actually receive that transitional payment. The purpose of that is to give time to adapt to the new funding arrangements. One concern that I want to flag at this point is, and you'll see this on the next slide when we look at the numbers, is that the need for transition worsens rather than improves over time. So it assumes that needs reduce. That does create a gap when it comes to the final year in the plan. And just to add, it's not new money. The transitional relief is being funded from the gainers of the Fair Funding Review, so it's truly redistributive. So this table here just shows you the position in terms of the government funding, so the new national settlement. So the recovery grant you can see on the top line, we've got that for the next 3 years. Revenue support grant, you can see the massive difference, the swing between being nationally funded, as we are now through this settlement, versus locally funded, which you will see when you see the business rates drop on the slide later on. And then you can see the funding for protection, and you'll see that RSG tails off. The main reason that RSG reduces is that the government formula assumes that local decision makers will increase their council tax by the maximum permitted, and the funding floor protection increases because the gap between the two for us grows. You'll see in the final year that RSG figure is highlighted in red. That's simply because I haven't got any certainty over that because it's a 3-year settlement. So I think it's a fair assumption to assume that we will still receive funding, but that's why that's highlighted. In terms of business rates, I've stood here for 7 years now and said we're going to have a business rates reset, we're going to have a business rates reset. We've finally had a business rates reset, and it's the biggest impact to our budget by some way. The growth's doubled over the last 12 years, and so has the pool benefit. So we've had significant pool benefit from being in the Derbyshire pool with the other 9 councils across the county. What the reset does, it effectively removes all of the growth. So it basically takes us back to that baseline that we had in 2013. It's just higher. So if there's no growth, there's no pool benefit. So the decision's been taken across Derbyshire to revoke the pool for 2026. We will keep that under annual review. There was just no benefit to being in a pool while there's no growth in the system. There's a few other technical changes around business rates, but they're cost neutral to the position, so I've not gone into too much detail on them. And we are using the planned business rates reserve to limit the impact on the general fund, which again I'll go into in a little bit more detail later. So you can see on this slide the impact of business rates income forecast. So this year we've had £6 million worth of business rates income. 3 million of that is growth over the past 12 years. And you can see that the baseline, because it's resetting, has dropped our business rates back down. I think what that means in a nutshell is that we're in a position whereby up until this point we were mainly locally funded. We are now predominantly nationally funded. We rely on the RSG basically to balance the budget. Little bit of information about the recovery grant. As I said earlier, it's a bit of a surprise. We're going to get £203,000 per annum for the life of the plan. On to council tax. No real changes with council tax, so it remains a local decision. It generates a third of our income for the general fund each year, and the government threshold has remained unchanged at 3%. The finance settlement assumes that maximum applied in the needs formula, which I mentioned just a couple of slides ago. And the main reasons for increasing council tax every year is threefold. It offsets the growth, particularly pay growth. We've got £1 million a year additional built into the base for pay for next year. It aligns with the government's formula. You take a double hit if you deviate from that. And more importantly, it grows the base over the future years. And the following slide just summarises the position. So the top line is the general fund shortfall over the next 4 years. Then the next line is the assumption around council tax, should you choose to increase it in all of those 4 years. And then the final line shows the benefit of doing that. And what that demonstrates is the benefit to the base. So in terms of a little bit of detail about the 26-27 budget, we have a shortfall before council tax of £46,000. We have if council tax were to be approved at the rate that's recommended in the report, that would rise to a £266,000 surplus. We kind of deem that contingency money. That's going to cover off something like if we get an expensive legal appeal around planning appeals, that type of thing. The budget's been cash limited wherever possible. We have built cost pressures in where we need to. We've included pay inflation in at 4%. And we've built the waste reforms for the food simpler recycling. That's going to cost us an extra £965,000. We've built that into the base. We've talked about RSG and transitional protection. And we have had an increase to our EPR, which is extended producer responsibility payments. So you may remember last year me talking about some additional income that we'd had from DEFRA to do with EPR payments. The basic gist of that scheme is that the government, the DEFRA team are paying out grants to local authorities, and that's collection and disposal authorities from levies collected from the private sector who are now being charged for their packaging. So they get charged it's on a rag rated basis, so red, amber, green, and they pay fees every year, and that's getting redistributed to us so we can improve our recycling. Council tax increase of 2.99 is what we recommend in the report. In terms of the rest of the plan, 27.8 through to 29.30, the 3-year settlement really does give us some certainty right through till 28.29, which is, to be honest, is great when it comes to setting a budget. in the context of a medium-term plan. It really aids our financial planning. We do get increases again from 29-30, and that's predominantly the funding uncertainty that I've had to factor into the planning again. The business rates growth is going to take many, many years to recover, and the government are talking about resetting the business rates every 3 years. If they do that, it will effectively remove the growth from our business rates position permanently, and that does put a reliance on government funding after the 3-year settlement. In terms of reserves, because of the settlement, because of the certainty, and because of the overall position that we found ourselves in, mainly because of the settlement, the unplanned reserves, call on reserves in this plan is minimal. We are using the business rates reserve to meet the planned impact of the reset, and we are using the resilience reserve in the later years of the plan to provide financial resilience. Just a little flag at the bottom there that LGR does present a risk to our investor save reserve. It's unclear at this time what our contribution will be. My estimate is that it will be adequate to cover. That will impact on our innovation plans in the future. Just to make you aware, to add on to what Councillor Barker said with regards to LGR, the Section 151 officers group across Derbyshire are meeting regularly, and this is one of the things that we're looking at the moment. On to housing. So the HRA remains ring-fenced, remains self-financed by the rental income. There is a new 10-year settlement that's going to come into play from the 1st of April 2026. It's not really changed anything in terms of rent setting, so the rent is still set on a maximum of CPI as at September plus 1%. But what it does do is it reintroduces convergence to get that parity across the sector, and that's being done over the 10-year rent settlement. Rent setting, as with council tax, remains a local decision, and of course the impact on tenants is always a consideration. The funding of the delivery of services is a consideration too, and I will come on to that on the next slide. The recommended increase in the report is 4.8%, which is CPI at September plus 1. In terms of the housing revenue account, as Councillor Barker said, in partnership with Ricknord Homes, we've achieved a C1 rating this year. We believe our homes are well managed and maintained, safe and of good quality. However, regulation and compliance is expensive, so we've had to build an extra £1.53 million into the budget from next year to meet all of those compliance costs. And that's just a little table just to give you a little bit of context of the £1.5 million. So the £1.5 million that we've had to build into the budget equates to a 4.2% rent increase in just to break even, and then 4.8 takes us to 1.7, which is why that's a recommended option, just to build a little bit of contingency in. In terms of capital programme, very little say, to be honest. There's not that much happening in the capital programme at this stage. Claycross Town deal work continues. We've got the Warm Homes Local Grant, which is the private sector equivalent to the Warm Homes Social Fund. And we've got ongoing capital works on our housing stock, stone brooms continuing, and we've got some small-scale regeneration programme schemes that we'd like to do. So thank you for listening, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Right. I'm first just going to hand over to Pat.
Questions for opposition?
Well, we've got that next. Technical questions are next. Just handing over to Pat.
It might be helpful, Chair, if we did the technical questions next.
You want to do well?
Are you taking questions now or after the report?
Apparently we're now doing questions first. Right, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. On the council tax base is the first one. Thank you for that comprehensive report. We had the pleasure of listening to it the other night. Very good. Section 2.20 on page 24 of the pack. I believe there's a typo. The base band D number is 338713.43. I think there's an extra one in there. It should be 33873.43, 33,873.43 equivalent band D properties, as I understand it. And the second one relates to that, is in table 2 below at 2.22. There are the proposed extra revenue figures at the various percentage increases. Are you able to tell me what is multiplied by the annual increase to get the extra revenue figure? Because I've tried to do it with that base number, it doesn't work. And I don't know enough about it to know what's right. So can you just elaborate me on those 2 points, please?
Of course, yes, certainly, yes, Mr. Councillor Baker. So if I'll check the typo. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's quite possible. The base should be 3300 point. So yeah, I will check that out for sure. We'll need to make sure that's right for the council tax report that comes in March. Yeah, in terms of calculating the tax base, it is a little bit more complicated than that. So that's based on a band D. So what we have to do is we have all of the bands. So we've got a humongous spreadsheet that basically takes all of the parishes, takes the district, the county, the police and the fire, and then we apply all of our tax base. That is the key figure. But then you take that tax base and you apply it across all of the individual bands to get to that final picture, and then they all get added together, and that's where you get the overall council tax income from. So.
But arithmetically, isn't that the same thing? If you've got the equivalent number, because it's quite a big difference.
Yeah.
It's 92,000 on the maximum, 92,000 difference.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same thing, and you do have to do it by band to be able to get to that point. I'd be more than happy to spend some time going through that with you if you want. It may take us a little bit longer than we've perhaps got today, so I'd be more than happy to do that if you'd like to.
So final one, Chair, bear with me. So that's 2.99% across every band equally?
No, it's 2.99% across every band, and each band will have a different value.
Percentage is different.
So for example, band D is 9/9, so band C is 8/9, and so on and so on and so on. And band H is 18/9. So you have to calculate them all out individually to get to the formula. I know, the joy of my job.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, I'm glad there's greater minds than my own working on this anyway. Just a query about Table 2 as well, Jane, and thank you to you and the team for all of the work on this. I know there's a huge amount of work that goes into the budget, so well done to you all for pulling it together. As I understand it, an extra 1% on council tax is equivalent to about £75,000 revenue, and the 90,000 difference between, say, 0 and 1% is actually the increase in the council tax base. Is that right? Because it sort of alludes to that in paragraph 2.23. So the proposed increase generating additional annual revenue of 311,000, inclusive of council tax base growth. So I think that, from my reading of that, the tax base growth is 90,000. In which case, is the table not slightly misleading? Because a 0% increase would still result in the extra revenue of 90,000 rather than 0. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and you're absolutely right. So we do the base first. So we calculate the base, and then we assume that that's a given, and then we apply the council tax increase. The reason that we do that is that the base is within our GIF. That's a technical adjustment, effectively, based on what's happening in the district in terms of new properties that are coming along, etc., etc. And we have to make adjustments for council tax support and that type of thing. Whereas the increase is within your gift as politicians. So I don't like to assume. The report makes a recommendation based on financial viability, but the decision is ultimately yours. So yeah.
And is that increase of 90? Obviously, the base increase goes into the base, if you like. But are we predicting future council tax base increases of a comparable amount in future years? Presumably, because it's based on house building, which we have a, not an exact science, but we have a rough idea of. Hoping David does have a rough idea of what's coming down the track, I suppose.
That's a good idea. Maybe I should build the. How many have we got to have David a year? Maybe I should build that into the tax base. That'd be quite a good idea, actually. Yeah, we do. We only do it annually, so we set the tax base annually. So we do forward forecast, but only for that following year, right. And we do tend to be quite prudent on that basis, which is why sometimes we end up with a bigger tax base the following year because more has come online. But you're right in what you're saying, Councillor Dale. The 90k is a given. Yeah. That's the technical adjustment, and then the increase goes on the top.
Councillor Adlington? Oh, no, it's not. It's you, is it?
It's not working.
Okay.
It's not working at the moment.
Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I've just borrowed one. Firstly, can I thank Jane for the time that she spent with our group talking about this? It was really helpful to have that to and fro and to get into the nitty-gritty. And I think I understood most of it, Jane, so thank you very much. At the time of that meeting, there was a lack of clarity over how the roll together of all the different grants and funds had actually, and consolidation of that had actually been formulated, and what impact that might have in terms of what you can spend it on. Has there been further clarity now given, and can you give us some assurances on that and when that might happen?
I'd love to be able to, but not yet. So what Councillor Weatherall's referring to there is something that was on the slide that we discussed in some detail in our briefing, and the new burdens money is being rolled into the funding settlement. Now, the funding settlement is not something that nobody ever sees. It must be somebody sitting in a dark room in Treasury who's got a massive spreadsheet, and I'd love to be able to see it, but I don't think we ever will. So the reason for saying that is that if you do roll funding streams into that big formula, you lose transparency. So the old new burdens funding was very transparent. So you had a change in legislation, you were expected to incur some costs to deliver that, and you would have got new burdens funding to an amount, so you would have known what you were kind of working to. What we've found with the waste reforms is that the new burdens funding has been rolled into the formula, so we know it's costing us £965,000, but we don't know how much has actually been rolled into the formula. So District Councils Network are lobbying hard on behalf of all the District Councils Networks to say, it's fine if you're going to put it in with the government formula, but please just give us some transparency about what that number looks like.
Thank you. Any further questions for Jane? Technical?
Thank you,
Oh,
Chair.
Councillor Shipman, yeah.
It was a question on the waste reforms, because my understanding was that DEFRA were fulfilling all the cost of them waste reforms, which is what I took from the meeting when we had that presentation, and we were querying where the money was coming from and whether the council would ever be landed with it. Now, your presentation made it sound like DEFRA are only funding part of that. So what's the difference, what's the monetary value between what DEFRA are giving us and how much those waste reforms are costing the council year on year?
Yeah, okay, so it's a little bit confusing because DEFRA are giving us money for extended producer repackaging, which isn't directly related to the waste reforms that we're talking about, although it's hard to put a paper between them because it's all to do with simpler recycling. But that's to do with the initiative around packaging. So that's transparent, and that's coming from DEFRA, and we've got £1.2 million next year. So if you took it in the round of that was related to what it's costing us, actually we're 300k up, right, because it's 965. The difficulty is that that's designed for other recycling, and the 965 is buried in the formula, which was Councillor Weatherall's question. So technically we should have had new burdens money for the waste reforms, the 965, and the 1.2 million is for us to be able to do more with recycling, which of course is the ambition of simpler recycling. Sorry, I know that's a bit confusing.
Okay, no,
there's two funding streams, one's hidden, one's not, but our costs are 965k a year.
Okay, that's brilliant. I've got one more question, if that's all right, Chair.
Okay.
The other things on the council tax increase, could it be a different figure, or does it need to be the maximum? Because looking at some of those figures there, and based on the in-year savings that we'd probably make anyway as a council, it doesn't look like it needs to go up maximum, and probably get away with 2% rather than the full 3%. What's your professional view on that? Does it have to be that high, or could it potentially be slightly lower?
So my professional view as an accountant and somebody who's setting this budget, my personal view is that the benefit of increasing council tax is about the base. So it's less about the individual year and more about the impact over the life of the plan. So you saw on that table that I had with the 4 years, you saw the difference between a £3.4 million gap if you put council tax up versus a 2.2 if you don't. So that's my professional opinion in terms of why it's important. The other reason why it's important is the government are assuming that we are doing that. The rest is a political decision.
Okay, no further questions for Jane? Right, over to you, Pat.
Well, most of it, I've got my briefing notes, but most of it Jane has already said. So I'll go through it and move the recommendations. Today I'm presenting the medium-term financial plan for the period 26-27, 29-30. First, the General Fund. The long-awaited funding reforms form the basis of this year's financial settlement. This was issued on the 13th of December. Is a 3-year settlement. It represents the most significant redistribution of funding in local government in 25 years. All the changes have an impact for us, but the biggest is the business rates reset. This is the first reset since 2013 and removes all our growth, significantly affecting our business rate income. We have been anticipating this reset for several years now. Moving growth from business rates to income to the business rates reserve to protect this has impacted, and we will now utilise this reserve for its intended purpose. Council tax income is a significant funding stream for us, providing over a third of our annual income needed to fund our services. A council tax increase of 2.99% is being recommended. In the report, the income generated each year helps us to offset growth, and just as importantly, it grows the base for future years of the plan when shortfalls become more challenging. Table 1 in the report demonstrates this. The 26-27 budget forecasts a deficit of 46,000. Additional income from grants and funding balances out the growth in this year. As in previous years, the main growth item is the forecast increase in pay budgets. The impact in 2026 is 991,000. Changes to the working practices of food waste collections are costing 965,000. Budget pressures continue to increase throughout the plan, largely because of inflation. The General Fund Capital Programme includes the Warm Homes local grant project, as well as ongoing vehicle replacement and asset management programmes. I will now move to the recommendations. Could I move the recommendations, please, in 1, recommendation 1 and 2, and recommendation 3, 4, 5 and 6. I'll take the rest of the recommendations afterwards, on the HRA.
Councillor Barker.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Do you want to? Yeah, cheers for that, and Jane for that presentation again. But in seconding these recommendations, I just want to say, because obviously this is the general fund bit we're doing, I just make 1 or 2 comments. Like we all know, setting the budget and deciding on the level of council tax is one of the hardest things I think we have to do as councillors, and it does seem to come round on a regular basis. It seems don't seem 2 minutes since we're doing it last year. But every year there's pressure not to put extra financial pressure onto residents, and also we need to have enough to fund the services we provide. The proposed increase for North East Derbyshire is 2.9, and this only equates to about 12p per week for anyone living in a Band D property. And I believe that's a price worth paying for the excellent services we provide. I know that the LGR is looming, and there's an argument to not increase council tax and spend up and spend all the reserves. I don't think that's the right thing to do, and our group don't. I believe it would be counterproductive. If we want reorganisation to work for the benefit of the communities we represent, and we've still got to provide all the services that we provide at the moment, it's still needed to raise the council tax. Because to not do it now, I think it'd be cutting his nose off to spite his face. I think the right thing to do is to set a budget in the same way as we would without the prospect of LGR. As we say, keeping and saying it's business as usual until we know things are official. I'd also like to thank Jane and her team for putting this budget together. As been recognised, it's not an easy process. As you can see from the appended report in 2.4, the settlement from government didn't arrive till the 18th of December, just in time for Christmas dinner, Jane, I reckon. So I hope you enjoyed your Christmas. Also, I'd like to thank Jane, and I know she's offered to present the papers to all the various groups, and I'm aware most of the groups took up that offer, where some of the technical questions could be asked to try and save that at this meeting. And with that, I'd like to second the recommendations 1 to 6 in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, just again to reiterate, thank you to Jane for the presentation and for coming to our group and presenting as well, and for all of the work that goes into it. I know it's a difficult time to be a local authority, finance director and accountancy team. So yeah, well done for all of your work on it. But as Jane said, it is a political choice around council tax, and I think it's fair to say that our group doesn't feel it's right to be increasing by 3%, essentially to generate a surplus which goes into reserves. The 3% rise we don't feel is about protecting services. The budget already essentially balances. And as I say, most of that extra income, pretty much all of it actually, ends up going into reserves at a time when we've already got about £6 million in reserves. So as I say, we just don't feel that it's the right approach, particularly on our residents, to be increasing their council tax by, and I know it's a significant amount if you break it down. It's a smaller amount if you break it down by week, but it is symbolic as well. And I think the local government reorganisation aspect is important because clearly, if you're talking about the base and protecting the base, and it starts to look a bit more hairy, I suppose, in 3-4 years' time. But the reality is, we know with pretty strong certainty that the council won't exist in that time frame. So we are really looking at the next 2 to 3 years, and that building up the reserves doesn't really benefit our residents, and it doesn't feel like it makes strategic sense from my perspective. That those reserves have been built up by taxpayers in North East Derbyshire and by what I would say is a well-run council, and we could be risking them being given away to other councils and other areas that haven't been so prudent, I suppose. So there's that side of it. And I also think that under reorganisation, residents are going to face, they're going to face council tax equalisation, which, as we discussed a few meetings ago, essentially means upward pressure on bills. So there's an argument for me around holding our nerve and keeping council tax as low as possible to try and reduce some of that upward pressure, but also to give some of our residents a bit of a break because we know that the council tax is going to be going up in the next 2 or 3 years by probably quite a significant amount, and a lower increase now would give them some breathing space. So I would like to propose, I'm not sure if Sarah will let me, but I'd like to propose an alternative, which is actually a council tax freeze. There are other Labour councils within Derbyshire, Erewash Borough, that are proposing a council tax freeze this year. So I don't think it's an extreme proposal. It's reasonable. It's responsible, and it's already happening elsewhere. And I think at a time when other councils are proposing maximum increases, we can set an example and lead by example here in North East Derbyshire, and join colleagues in Erewash who are proposing a freeze. And the other thing I would say is that the council always, and it's testament to having a very strong officer team here, we always over-deliver on our efficiency targets. And if every single year we always set an efficiency target and we do better than that. And so all I think, I recognise that freezing council tax now will create a challenge in future years, but really it's all about tighter management of the budget and more discipline in terms of efficiency savings, which I'm very confident our officer team would be able to manage. So as I say, I think this is a choice between higher council tax and more reserves, more going into reserves at a time when our residents arguably need the money in the back pocket, or a freeze and having tighter efficiency. So I think, as I say, residents deserve that break now, and I think it's a modest sacrifice for the council, but it will be a meaningful one for residents in North East Derbyshire. So I'd like to propose a freeze instead of, I think it's recommendation 4, 3 rather, I'm being reliably informed, should be amended to a 0% council tax. And the effect of that will be obviously that there won't be as much going into reserves this year, and it will mean a bit more pressure on the efficiencies and savings plan, but I think that that is manageable. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Weatherall?
I'm on. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, yeah. I have to agree with Councillor Dale on
Are you
this.
coming in to second this proposal?
I'm sorry.
Are you seconding it?
Oh, sorry. No,
No, you go.
Yes, is the answer. Seconding.
Right, okay, thank you.
So you're seconding it now? I'll be thirding it, Chair.
Right, Councillor Thacker.
Well, Chair, someone's just stolen my thunder. So anyway, I'll be thirding this, Chair. And my reasons are in terms of the information that's been shared with us about local government reorganisation. Yes, that is the elephant in the room. And I don't dispute that we do have to think responsibly about our attitude to local government reform. Because we can't be in a situation where we can say, well, it's going to happen, so let's spend everything and let the coffers be empty, and then that's that. I understand all that. And I understand that there are Derbyshire guidelines amongst Section 151 officers, which is about working together and so on. But ultimately, this is about political decision making. It's the political elected that will decide what happens to reserves, what happens to the money, and how it's spent for the benefit of the residents in their own area. And my contention is that the council tax freeze that's being proposed is about benefiting the residents in North East Derbyshire, because we do have a cost of living crisis. You only have to switch on the news locally and nationally to see what's happening in terms of inflation, people who are struggling, and that's in the backdrop of, in Derbyshire, the county council putting up the council tax by its maximum, despite all their promises, by the maximum, knowing full well that there's no rationale for it. That they're selling off the family silver left, right and centre, as it appears to me, and then telling people in Derbyshire that they need more money from them. And when I talk to residents who are living on the breadline or below the breadline, every penny counts. And why should we add to the burden of council tax by putting it up by 2.99% just because it's government expectation? Surely that would be an alarm bell in the first instance by the government telling us to do this, and it's a double whammy if we don't. I don't respond to threats like that. I think we should be making a decision based on what we can do for our local people. And it is possible to do this, because we did a council tax freeze in 2019 and 2020, despite the warnings about it will impact on budgets and so on. We did it. The sky didn't fall in. We managed a council tax freeze, and I think we've got all the ways that we can achieve this. It's either through reserves, it's about financial approaches to how we save money, and we are talking about plugging a £46,000 shortfall in 2026-2027. £46,000. And surely, just in our investment strategy alone, if we'd have thought about being a little bit more adventurous, we could have found £46,000. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. And therefore, for those reasons, I think this council could do that. And I know there is long-term benefit, but coming back to local government reorganisation, in 3 years' time, by the time we get to that point, North East Derbyshire District Council might not even exist. So, council tax freeze for me. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just feel I should advise you at this stage, now that the amendment has been seconded, that an adjournment may be required if the amendment is approved and then the amended substantive motion is moved. The Council has to approve a balanced budget And in these circumstances, clearly the Section 151 officer would need to look at changes to the budget to move to the new decision. This is legal advice on the practical need for an adjournment and nothing else. And its main aim is to ensure we meet our legal duty of a balanced budget. I don't know if you want to say anything at this stage, Jane.
No, that's absolutely right, Sarah. That's my understanding. We'd need to adjourn, and I'd need to understand what you'd want that amended budget to look like.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Are we adjourning now then, or are we having a...
No.
No, not yet. We've got to go through
If I might,
the
Chair.
process.
Just to add, no, we're not adjourning now. We would adjourn were that to be approved. So the debate can continue, but just in the knowledge that we might need an adjournment if that motion is successful.
Right, well, we've had an amendment proposed. You were up first.
Well, I was going
Councillor Gillett.
to ask that question because in the past we've allowed an alternative budget just to drift under the radar, as it were, whereas there is a proper procedure for dealing with it, and I've been hauled up on that procedure in other places, so it seems only fair that it's pointed out today. And I'm sure Councillor Dale's already got a piece of paper with it all drafted out to hand over to the Finance Officer if he were to win his debate today. Yeah, yeah. So it's not even on the back of an envelope, presumably, is what you're telling us.
Charlotte's good.
If I assume we're on to the debate about the amendment now.
Debate on the amendment, yes.
You know, we all hate putting council tax up. There's no doubt about that. It's one of the worst decisions we have to take every year. But the trouble is it goes with the job. Being a council is about making choices, and sometimes that's doing things that you'd rather not do. And I must admit, the time I always regret doing it is when my own council tax bill comes and I think, you know, who voted for that? And it turns out it's been me. We have to get things in context, I think. Yes, there are people out there who are struggling. I know people who are struggling. And when we put our council tax up, it's not just about our increase. That's on top of the £216 we're already paying, on top of the parish, on top of the fire precept, the police precept, and also the county council precept. And as has been pointed out, that looks like it's going up by £80 this year, £80 next year, £80 the year after, and £80 a year. So we're talking about over £300 just on the county figures as well. In terms of that, it is 2.99% that's been proposed, £6.48 a year for a Band E property. Most properties in Derbyshire, in North East Derbyshire aren't Band E, they're smaller than that. So we're talking about 10p a year for most people. It is easy to look at this financial year and say, sorry, 10p a week rather. It is easy to look at the increase and say, yes, you can manage it this year. But the whole point about the budget is a medium-term financial plan. And it has to stack up year in, year out for the whole life of the plan. And I've heard what's been said today before. I've heard it, and I've seen how it plays out. You can manage this year, you can probably manage next year without an increase, and you might even be able to manage the year after without an increase. But eventually it catches up with you. And that's what's happened at the county. We had the games at the county where they were always under, it was always 1% less or something like that. And by 2024, that amounted to £40 million of foregone income that they could have had that year, which by some fluke also equated to exactly the amount of money the county had to cut from its budget that year. So those cuts that year were a direct consequence of not putting the council tax up by the maximum each year. And that saved me, I worked it out, that saved me £2.50 a week on my county council tax bill. Less than a cup of coffee, basically, a week. And it resulted in massive cuts. Our budgets are a different scale, but the consequences are still the same in the long term. There are lots of prudent assumptions, I think, in this budget, but last year we made what we thought were prudent assumptions, and we got caught out by them, particularly regarding pay, and we had to find additional funding. And there is some risk in this, whatever budget we go. I think it will come in on balance, as what's been said, but none of us can ever be sure. And therefore, there is that little bit of flexibility in there. If things do come in slightly askew as to what we've predicted. If we do go along with this and raise additional funding, I don't see that sitting in reserves, and I've told the Finance Officer that as well. She won't let us spend it until we know for certain. But I've seen how EMCA works, for example. And it's quite clear that the County Council hasn't got the capacity to do a lot of the work it needs to do to put schemes forward And even if it does, the schemes that we think are really, really important in North East Derbyshire might not make the top of the list when the County Council puts them forward on our behalf. And so it's quite clear to me that as a responsible district, we're going to have to do some of that legwork ourselves and do some of the feasibility studies so that we've got schemes on the shelf when funding's available. And I've already said, I think we need to start thinking about that. And she said, where was the money coming from? And this, to me, will be one of the potential sources to do some of those schemes, like around transport. You know, I'm a strong proponent of extending the tram track from Sheffield to Chesterfield via Killamarsh, and I want it to come down to Clay Cross. But somebody might have to spend some money first to try and produce that scheme. And to me, that might be one of the use of that extra money if we do raise this. So that's the sort of thing we'll forego. I am also deeply concerned about the local plan, the draft local plan. My hope is that we get something in place. But if we don't, I don't think we should just roll over or agree something that members aren't happy with. I think we may have to fight some speculative developments at some stage, and I want to make sure we can do that if it costs us some money. So there are things like that. So don't think that by going for a 0% increase, it's a risk-free. You're foregoing doing things for the community and doing stuff for North East Derbyshire generally. I go back to the point, yes, if you haven't got the money, 2.99% is a lot of money to you. But it is a £6.48 increase a year for Bandy property, 12 pence a week, or much less for other people. And therefore, I hope people bear that in mind and vote against the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Gillett. Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. And a lot of what we do and a lot of the decisions we make here are about sending a message to the people out there that are listening and that we talk to every day. And if there was no LGR coming down the track, then I think my decision would be a very different decision. However, what I see today is that decision making is being taken away from us locally, from communities locally, and I want to send a message to our local communities that I want to do the best and do right by them as a local district councillor. So there's a political angle here. I know there's the hard money and where that money is going to come from, but this district council won't be in existence in 3 years, potentially, possibly. If we've got £6 million in reserves, then a good message to send to our communities and to our families is we're not going to sit on that £6 million and not know what's going to happen to it in 3 years' time. We're actually going to use some of that to make your lives a little bit better on a day-to-day basis. And it might only be a little bit better, but at least we're sending the message that we're trying. So I think my view of my decision today is coloured by LGR, what's coming down the tracks, and the reality of the prudent situation that this council finds itself in, i.e. the years that it's been careful with its money, and now let's give a little bit back, would be my view.
Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. I was following what Councillor Dale was saying and nodding along, agreeing with it, but where he lost me was at the 0%, because I think that's such an extreme opposite view to what's on the table, and it doesn't stand up to the figures that we've been shown by the Director of Finance. So my view would be it should be somewhere in the middle, so that it fulfills the shortfall, albeit the small shortfall in the budget, but also doesn't leave us with a budget that doesn't balance. So I can't support this amendment, but I will be proposing one that's somewhere in the middle after this one falls, which I'm guessing will happen. So yeah, like I say, I don't think you can go for zero. I've always believed you should put it up slightly, because 1% this year and 1% next year is better than 2% next year. So that's why we need to put it up somewhat, a little bit this year. And the flip side of it, which is Councillor Gillett's argument, that it's only £6 something a year, but every single bill that a family's got and a household's got goes up £6 a year. Suddenly, it's kind of floodgates are open and you can't buy anything. So it's that compounded liability on families that concerns me. It's not just the one-off bills; it's all the bills that come into our household that go up the 3%, the 4%. So I don't believe in both extremes of those positions. I think that what we should be doing is somewhere in the middle, And I think that does show that we're considerate of the amount of money we're bringing in council tax, whilst also making sure it's spent in the district before LGR happens and it gets taken away to somewhere, Chesterfield or somewhere.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. It's obviously not the appropriate time to second that, but I do agree with what Ross is saying. It's not very often I agree with Councillor Gillett, but I know exactly where he's coming from. I think it is important to increase the council tax base because it has such a massive impact in future years. But I don't think we need to increase it by the 299. I think a smaller amount would do. Yes, I think, let's be honest, we can be 99% certain that LGR is going through. But there's also the possibility that it may not, and we can't suddenly pull the rug from under ourselves if it doesn't happen. So I think we have got to be prudent. We have got to say, let's try and balance this year's budget and give us a little bit of a cushion and then move forwards. Excuse me. So again, I'm happy to consider a smaller increase, but I can't back the amendment at this time.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm listening to both sides of it and I can sort of see where people are coming from, but I have to say I'm still with the 2.99%. For me, I'm not a mathematician. That's Jane's job. That's what she's employed for. And looking at what I feel our constituents need going forward is something that is going to make their life better. And that 6 million that we've currently got in reserves won't go very far if we have to start doing feasibility studies to get things going, like we talked about the transport. One of the worst things we've got around here is transport. So if we can bring something like that on, by having this 2.99 and balancing the budgets and putting us in a better place for our constituents so they can see what we're getting and what they're getting for their money, I think, you know, we'd be silly to turn it down and to look at something else. Like I said, I'm no mathematician, but I know the people that I represent, yes, some of them are really struggling, but others would rather see that money invested and put into something that's more suitable for their lives as we go forward. So I still propose that 2.99% stays, and I'm against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Adlington String, yeah?
Thank you. And once again, thank you to Jane and to the finance team for all of their work, not just now, but all year round, to get us to this point as a council. There's definitely, and Councillor Thacker missed out on this, there's definitely an analogy here about lemmings again. There is a government expectation here that we as a council are going to vote for LGR, that we're going to vote this way on the budget. We've seen it with the council elections. And I'm right with Councillor Weatherall that we have to send a message. And this council has, at every single stage when we have sat here and asked us to be brave, the people of North East Derbyshire has refused to do that. The Labour government, Keir Starmer's government, won't make the hard choices, and instead it's making us make those hard choices. Especially today, I'm having to make a very hard choice to vote with the Tories. But I don't think 10p a week is justified if it's not necessary. And I don't take the argument that there could be a new tram line. I think that that's just a whimsical thing made up on the fly. And by the time that feasibility study comes through, then this council will be dissolved anyway. So I don't think there is a coherent or cohesive argument that's strong enough to make me want to vote for this. And if we can make a stand for the residents that we're supposed to represent and stand up against a government which is failing us during a cost of living crisis, an inequality crisis, whilst the rich are getting richer and people here in North East Derbyshire are struggling to put food on the table, then I'll do it, and you know what, I'll swallow my pride and I'll vote with those in blue. So thank you very much.
Right, okay. Have you got any closing comments? Yeah. Councillor Bog.
Yeah, because it's amendment, isn't it? I can speak on it because I've moved and seconded the thing. Yeah, just to sum all that up, really, and it's not something that we haven't considered, what's been said over there. We're not naive in that respect, but there's decisions to be made. As you know, at every level, I'm looking at you, Alex, and others that are sit in other places, there's a consequence to not putting the council tax up, maybe not this year, but it compounds itself every year. And if you're not careful, you end up in a situation somewhere down the line where you have to bump it up massively to just catch up, or you cut your services to fit your budget. And the decision that we're recommending today is that we put it up by that amount. And I think it's reasonable that we do that. I think we've got to carry on providing the services that we're delivering. And I just think I think I said counterproductive to not do that at this stage. So I obviously can't support the 0% increase, and we'll stick with the 2.99%.
Thank you. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just thank Councillor Weatherall and Councillor Adlington Stringer for the support with this amendment. I was thinking, what happens when you get mix of green and a blue, and I think you get turquoise, don't you? I'm not sure that's a good thing, actually, but anyway. But thank you for the support on the same. And to thank Councillor Thacker as well for his support as well and his speech. And absolutely, bang on right. The world doesn't end when you have a council tax freeze in a district council environment at all, as we demonstrated previously. There's been a few remarks about the county council and Councillor Gillett in particular. First, in terms of the savings, we didn't increase by the maximum in 5 out of the 8 years that we ran the council, and that saved the average bandee over those 8 years £500. So it was a significant saving. It does matter to residents. And the point around it catching up with you, there were plenty of councils who at the minute are going through similar financial challenges, and I'd argue they're largely caused by delayed impact of COVID as well as wider demand pressures. And there are several councils who are going through that who did increase by the maximum every single time. So it's not always just about council tax and whether you do or don't increase it. And I think, I accept it's a difficult decision always, because you have to balance out that future, going into the base and all of those sorts of things. But I think the position we're in at the moment, with LGR on the horizon, we are in a bit of a unique position, and we do have an opportunity here to keep it as low as possible. And then finally, just to reference the references to transport that were made, and having a tram line, which I think Sheffield City Council's still paying off the debt on the tram system that they put in 20 odd years ago. But it's interesting that that's been raised, because we had a shovel-ready scheme already with the Barrow Hill line, but the Labour government scrapped it, and that would have given a station in Killamarsh, it would have given a station in Whittington or Eckington, and it would have opened up the opportunity more for a station in Claycross as well. So it's interesting that that's been raised, and there's a classic example there of a scheme that would have worked and the Labour government scrapped it. But yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerry, do you wish to reply? No? Or do you just want to go to the vote?
No, I'm only very conscious of the fact if you reduce your council tax this time by 1%, your base rate is 1% lower next year, and obviously that compounds up, and it's that base rate that you need to keep that if you're going to work through. So I don't want to change my mind. I won't change my mind.
Right, we'll take on a vote on the amendment then. Proposed by Councillor Dale to make no increase, I believe it is. Is everyone happy with the vote? Have you all spotted your names? All recorded?
No, Chair, apparently 2 people haven't voted.
2 people haven't voted.
2 people. 2 people's gone.
Charlotte's left the room.
Oh, okay, sorry, yes, so we're down.
Just each other.
Don't tell him that. I should have thought of that himself.
Right, no, it's not changing the result. Right, thank you, Member. That's failed. That's motion's failed. Right, we go back to the original motion. Sorry? Yeah, Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I mentioned just a moment ago, I want to move an amendment that we actually only increase it by 1%, which I think covers the shortfall, gives a bit of leeway. I know it's not, you know, mountains, but it takes us over into a balanced budget position. And I think it deals with the concerns that the Conservative group and some of the Independents and Greens have got, whilst also dealing with the arguments that Labour are putting forward, which is we need to make sure that that base still increases. I think this is a common sense approach to it. I think if we put it up a little bit, it'll help next year when the base is a bit higher. And it also, as we've been speaking about, sends a message to residents that we are mindful of the burden that we're putting on them. So I would like to amend it so it increases by just 1%, not the full 2.99% that was in the original motion, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shipman. Councillor Hancock, I presume you're seconding that motion?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second that on the same basis. It gives us that little bit of steadfastness, and it does deliver a balanced budget without causing any great issue. And I have nothing more to add to it on that basis.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll open that to debate. Councillor Dale.
Sorry, Chair. Just for clarity, was it 1% that was said?
Yes.
1%. Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Nobody want to comment? Nobody? No? Right, we'll go, we'll put that to the vote then. Right, I think that's everybody. Okay, members, that's also failed. Right. So we'll now return back to the original motion.
What's clearing first?
Yeah, it's not clearing, is it?
Well, the recommendations have been put and seconded.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the screens to clear.
5 and 6.
Okay. Right, okay, we're back to the original motion as previously proposed and seconded. So we'll take a vote on that now then, please, members. Right, members, thank you very much. That's passed. So we're now got to take a second vote on the HRA, I believe, haven't we? The next one. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now
So, Councillor Kerry.
Now on to the HRA. Social housing.
Your mic's not on, Pat.
Sorry. Now on to the HRA. The social housing rents will follow a new 10-year settlement from April 26. The formula remains the same, but there is also reintroduction of convergence towards formula rent levels. The maximum permitted increase from April 26 will be 4.8%. The impact of the affordability of increased rents for tenants is important when rent setting. Consideration must also be given to the increased cost pressures on the HRA to deliver services to our tenants. We pride ourselves on providing our tenants with homes that are well managed and maintained, safe and of good quality. We have recently been recognised for this by the regulator of social housing, awarding the highest grade C1 for our housing services delivered in partnership with Recknell Homes. However, regulation and compliance are having a significant impact on the cost of delivery. Having taken all the above into consideration, a rent increase of 4.8% is being recommended in the budget for 26-27. The capital programme for HRA capital works totals 87.8 million over the 4-year programme. It also includes warm homes, social housing fund and a budget for small-scale regeneration schemes and 4 million to fund ongoing commitments to purchase affordable houses to replace those lost through right to buy sales. In the original notification, the 4.8% gives a little bit of leeway, less than £20,000. I would recommend that we go, we'll move the recommendations, please, in 7, 8, 9, 10, and the last one, the letter of comfort that we have had to do ever since we've worked with Recknold Homes, and 11.
Okay, Councillor Barker.
Yeah, thanks again, Pat. And again, in seconding this recommendation 7-11, I'd like to make a few comments. As with the council tax, putting rents up is not something we enjoy doing or that we take lightly. It's something that, again, comes round every year. However, and I think it's been mentioned several times, and it's in 2.45 in the Cabinet report, that because of the new legislation and the regulation, to meet the compliance requirements, the HRA needs to fund an additional 1.55 million per annum for 26-27, which is a significant amount. We also, as mentioned, I've mentioned it, and it's been mentioned several times, it was a really great achievement to get the C1 accreditation. Not many housing providers have managed that. I keep looking in Inside Housing and on this government information unit. It's few and far between that actually reach that level. I think it's something we should be really proud of at North East Derbyshire, and it proves that Ricknold is managing the housing stock really well and providing a good service to the people who live in those houses. Again, that's something from my time there, I think is a real boon, that it's not just bricks and mortar. We actually look after and try and care for the people and the residents or customers, I'm being told to say, in those houses. So I think it's to maintain that service and that provision. I think it's good that we move that 4.8% increase, and I really hope that we can maintain that standard that Ricknold Home is providing. So yeah, I'd formally second the recommendation 7-11 in that report. Thank you.
Any member wish to speak on that? No, right. That's we'll put that straight to the vote then, please, to accept that recommendation. Right, that's 32 in favour, 2 against and 2 abstentions. That's carried. Thank you very much, members. And I think we need to get Councillor Thacker back in now, is it?
Point of order.
Right, now move on to item 8, Treasury Management Report 26-27 to 29-30. Over to you, Councillor Carey, to introduce this item.
The purpose of this report is to provide Council with the necessary information to approve the suite of Treasury strategies for the period 24 to 28. Strategies are compliant with both the SIPFA Code of Treasury Management and the MHCLG's investment guidance. The suite comprises of 4 strategies. The Treasury Management Strategy, which provides the framework for the managing the Council's cash flows, borrowing and investments for the period. Capital Strategy, which is intended to provide a high-level, concise overview of how capital expenditure and capital financing and treasury management activities contribute to the provision of the Council's services. Investment Strategy, which focuses on the investments made for the services purposes and commercial reasons rather than those made for the treasury management. And Flexible Capital Receipts Strategy, which defines the specific use of receipts as per section 15 brackets 1 bracket A of the Local Government Act of 2003. Normally you get a quarterly update at Council that says there are no deviations from the strategy. This is just a yearly a period strategy that reinforces what we're talking about and the areas that we cover and the limitations and broad that we work between. So I formally would like to move recommendations in 1 A, B, C, D, 2 A, B, C, 3 and 4, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carey. Councillor Barker.
Yeah, I'd second all them. I'm not going to read them out, but there they are. And I know it's been discussed at the audit committee.
Nigel, you're not on yet.
Pat, there's got to switch off. I've got to say all that again?
Yeah.
What did I say?
Only if there's a joke in there.
You said Happy New Year.
I'll go back to the very beginning now. Happy New Year. Yeah, I'll second that with the, I'll not read it all out, but like I say, I know it's been discussed at the audit committee and I can see Martin's name's already up in lights, so I'll let you comment on that, but I formally move those recommendations in the Treasury Management Report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wetherall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I might be taking this this question or this comment out of order. So apologies, Chair, if I am. It's a general point really that I wanted to make because I understand that this is a process really document that we've received here, which is about how funds, how money is actually managed, if you like. My point really is more about a general principle around centralisation of funding, and I wanted to talk particularly about the business rates and the ability that allows or doesn't allow for local decision making. And I think in terms of the business rates, this is a further example of reducing the ability to make local decisions on the money that we're getting, and to be locally flexible and to benefit from our own diligence. And this worries me, it's of concern. So there are disincentives in the changes to the business rates processes that disincentivises us locally on things like local business growth. And as a small business owner in North East Derbyshire, that concerns me. But I do understand that this is about process. So apologies if I'm out of turn on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thacker.
Thank you, Chair. So welcome to my annual speech on investment strategy. it will come as no surprise that I do want to make comment on this, and I did so at audit, Councillor Barker, you'll be pleased to know.
I've heard about it.
Good. I'm glad my name's getting round. So, anybody who's thinking about investing money, and somebody, a resident, for example, popping into their local building society would be confronted with a range of investment ideas, including a straightforward bank account that's 1.10%, or taking out a one-year bond at 3.85%, or a five-year bond at 4%. Now, of course, given our LGA conversation this afternoon, I'm sure nobody's wanting the five-year bond here. But of course, we still have to think about SIPFA's code, which requires the council to invest its treasury funds prudently. It doesn't mean risk adversely. Prudently means about getting the best value for the money from our residents and making our money sweat more. Not the shoebox analogy, I'm not going to use that this time, but it's actually about getting the best value long-term investment. Now, at the audit committee, we had Arlene Close come along to talk to us as our advisors about our investment strategy, and we saw a benchmarking graph that shows where North East Derbyshire sits amongst other local authorities. And we are below the baseline when compared with other local authorities, only just, I grant you, but we're still quite low down on investment strategy and making our money go further. And while I commend the officers for thinking about making sure that we're not putting our money in a dangerous situation, nobody's asking for something that is too risky, we still need to look at something that is far from risk adverse. We need to be pushing a bit further along that benchmark graph. And I don't think we're doing that. It's been raised several times. And if we had been looking at it and finding a way to increase our investments, we could have plugged that £46,000 shortfall, for example. Or we could have been looking at Councillor Gillett's new tramway system, which might find difficulties going around that roundabout if we do that one at the top of Mill Lane. But I think there are other ways that we can think about investments that don't mean that we have to rely on council tax base alone. And I still feel that this council, we've nodded sometimes in the right place. We've heard that, yes, we ought to look at it. We'll talk to Arlene Close and see what they say. But I feel that as an audit committee member, there ought to be a proper conversation or a discussion or a sitting down of cabinet, whatever, to talk about other investment strategies. There are still things that we could look into that mean that we're looking at something further than 1.10%. We're now pushing into the 3.85% category if we were going to our local building society. That's just one thing, because I know we're not putting all our money into banks and so on. We're spreading our investments. But we do need to have a serious conversation about what else we can do. So, once again, my annual speech is, instead of saying, yes, Councillor Thacker's right, perhaps we could be a little bit more risky, why can't we sit down and have a proper discussion about portfolios? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thacker. Councillor Kerry.
Jane, would you like to reply to any of that? It's only the parameters. This is not... We're not talking about individual parts of this. It's just the parameters of the strategy.
Happy to reply, Chair, through you, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Councillor Thacker, we do have this debate a lot, and I absolutely do take your point, and I'm more than happy for us to have that workshopped out in the audit committee if you'd like to do so, with the Chair's permission, of course. This is just the strategy, and the strategy would allow us to do all that you talk about. There's plenty of leeway and leverage within the strategy, the bands and the ranges of what we can and can't invest in. So today's about approval of that strategy. I think what we need to think about is sharing of views and strategies to apply the strategy, if that makes sense. So more than happy if the chair of audit committee wants to workshop that out, more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Jane. The recommendation is on page 41 and 42 of the report. We'll now move to the vote. Okay, that's been passed. Thank you very much, members. Right, we'll now move on to item 9 on the agenda, implementation of the council tax premium for empty homes. I'm going to ask Councillor Joe Birkin to introduce this item. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Council, I'd want to introduce this item and recommend it to you because of the importance that there is in the work that is identified in the report. It's a decision of the council. Only the council can do that, as we've seen. And the idea of the report and the recommendation is that we increase the empty homes premium policy that the council is able to add to the houses in the area, any that have been left empty for quite a while. The idea of the proposal is to encourage homes to be used to meet the needs of individuals, to meet the needs of the district as well. It's part of our corporate vision. The council plan asks us to want to create a great place to live well, and part of that is important to improve the housing stock that we've got and to maintain availabilities for individuals. The premium was introduced in 2024 at a 100% additional charge, and that was effective in reducing the amount of empty properties from 300 down to the current number is 196. But unfortunately, it's slowed off a bit at the moment. The efforts to reduce the number of empty houses, and so that's why this new proposal is being put forward to you. The additional income would help to maintain the efforts that have been used by our housing officers, and it would also bring us in line with other councils in Derbyshire. There's only Amber Valley that doesn't make a charge out of all of the councils in Derbyshire. The idea is not to penalise anyone. That's not the intention whatsoever. And as part and parcel of that, there are exceptions which we're able to use should they be necessary. These are usually come when there are genuine attempts are being made to let or sell a house. If there are technical / legal problems in anyone trying to let or sell the house, and if there are any unforeseen circumstances that are beyond the control of the owner of the property, and they can be taken into account by our housing officers when we look at the proposals. There's various amounts of legislation which we've been able to use to affect these proposals. The Local Government Finance Act of 1992 gives us the right to apply a premium, and the later ones allow us to make exemptions to it. The exemptions that we can make specifically are for members of the armed forces, and if it's part of a single property which has been left empty, such as a granny flat or something like that you may have. So any of us grannies or grandpas out there, we're all right. We're still all right. The income that we get, we'll get a 10% share of income from this because of the other public services that are on the rate demand that goes through. So our share is about 10% of what we'll get. As I said, there are no plans for a second homes premium at all. So I would recommend that the council approve the revised council tax empty homes premium policy, which encompasses the implementation of an increased empty homes premium to commence from the 1st of April 2026. And I'll move that recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon. Councillor Barker.
Thanks, Joe, and I'll second that, and I'll just stress that this is not a money-making exercise. It's trying to bring empty homes back into use and encourage people that have got homes that have been stood empty for a long period of time to actually have a good think about it and get them houses back on the market, because we do need them. So I'll second that those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Unsurprisingly, I'm definitely going to support this, seeing as we've put it to Council several times previously and it's been turned down, so 100% got support there. But one concern I am going to raise, because it does concern me quite significantly, is the robustness of the equality impact statement, which doesn't seem to identify any. It says the equality analysis has not identified any potential for discrimination or adverse impact, and all opportunities to promote equality have been taken. I would say very obviously, and whilst death doesn't follow a particular pattern, logically it is going to affect older people whose parents die. So I think there is the potential for age discrimination. I think perhaps we do need to revisit this equality impact assessment. But that aside, 100% support what you're doing.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and broadly support the proposal. Again, I was going to ask a query around sort of exemptions, but I think Councillor Perkins answered that in that, you know, I would, while supporting the policy, I would hopefully expect that in extreme circumstances, officers can have a conversation with the person and they can, you know, because certain things do happen, major structural issues with the property, for example, or, you know, or legal disputes, all those sorts of things. But no, it's a good thing. It will hopefully bring properties back into use, and you know, particularly with the local plan. I know it's not a huge contribution, but if it's helping us to meet some of our housing requirements, that's a good thing, and it's good that properties are being brought back into use. And also pleased that we're not proposing a second homes council tax. I think that may impact on the tourism sector in the district. So yeah, broadly supportive, as I say, and I think our group are a little bit more mixed. I think we're having a free vote on this, but yeah, I personally support it.
Councillor Walton.
Yeah, I'm the mixed. First of all, I welcome the fact it's not going to apply to second homes. I think that's a very good decision. And is it on? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, right. So first of all, I welcome the decision that it's not going to apply to second homes. I think that's a very, very good decision. I also believe that, yeah, we should be looking at ways of bringing empty homes for all the reasons, you know, bringing more housing stock in, increasing turnover, and the antisocial behaviour that can be associated with empty homes. But I do have reservations. And I looked at this when I had the housing portfolio a few years ago, and I did my own background research. And strangely, it is absolutely crystal clear that's also backed by the officers in the statement that they make, is that it's quite an expensive tax to collect, mainly in terms of officer time. So it's really not about the money. It's also a tax that falls on the property and not the individual circumstances of the person, which I think I'm going to come into two circumstances which is a bit unfair. And it doesn't raise a lot of money as well. I also, you must bear in mind that these, I'm taking these in an environment we have where everything's being taxed. We've got one of the highest tax rates now since the Second World War. Mansion tax, non-dom tax, tax on the farmers. We've got the tourist tax, tax on pension funds. So just outline a couple of examples which I think may be caught. First of all is probate. And I know that you're going to say it's an exemption for probate, but executors now is becoming more and more onerous. It's difficult to find people who are willing to become executors. And there are family disputes. There are family disputes that go over wills, contested wills. Probate can go on for a long period of time. And I don't think that is particularly covered. And I think that, again, is it falls on the property, not on the individual. And I think you have to look at the individual circumstances in terms of fairness. The other example is where you have perhaps an individuals who don't have a lot of money but are restoring a property over time, which is an empty property. They may be living in a caravan. They may be living with their family. Why should they be penalised in paying this extra council tax when they're actually working very hard to bring that property back into line? So I take on board that this isn't about the money, which it isn't, but if it isn't about the money, there are better ways of doing it. At a national level, if we want to increase turnover in housing, very easy, we abolish or we reduce stamp duty. We can abolish or reduce capital gains tax on rental property or second homes or on land. All these things can be done, and again, at a local level, we've got the local plan. So I will be voting against this, and I think the reason why I'm going to vote against it, I have so many conversations in Dronfield Woodhouse and Gosforth Valley with people who are paying too much tax, and they feel this tax burden. So although I appreciate and like the sentiment around why this is being done, and I'm speaking as an individual Conservative councillor, I think the rates of tax have gone up too far in this country, and every time we impose these things, yes, it's always an exception. We need a tourist tax to help the hotel business, but in the end, I think you've got to take a stand and say, no, I think we have to recognise that taxation is a real burden on the residents, certainly of my ward, and I think on the district. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. Right, well, the recommendation, and this report is on page 92, we'll now take a vote on the item. Right, that's carried. Thank you, members. For, 4 against and 1 abstention. Right, we'll now move on to item 10, progress report on the development of the new local plan. I'm going to pass this over to Councillor Pickering to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. This item's here because there's the terms of reference to the local plan working group requires updates regularly to come to council. So there's no decision to be made today on this. It's a report for noting by council, but I will take this opportunity, Chair, just to draw your attention to item 2, paragraph 2, the importance of an up-to-date local plan. You know, we are limited by time to get the local plan updated and submitted. That's by the end of this year. There are several reasons in there. We do know that by this November, we'll not be able to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing sites because at that point, the new target for houses, 600, kicks in. And if without a local plan, we wouldn't be able to add any weight to any planning applications, and it would leave us open to speculative planning applications beyond that time. It is possible that we could propose a strategy that delivers less than 600, but we've had expert external advice saying that the current position in North East Derbyshire makes that highly unlikely. So it is important that we progress with a plan that looks at that, and we are in a position to be able to submit a plan at the end of this year, whatever that looks like. If we don't submit a plan, the planning inspector, when they come to look at that, will not be able to approve a plan. It'll, as I said, it'll leave us in an exposed position to speculative development. There is a time scale for the planning inspector to approve any plan we put forward. It starts January 27 and can go through to May 28. We don't want to be dragging on that length of time. We want it expedited as quickly as we can. So it is important that we get in a proper time scale an updated local plan. I'll draw that to your attention, Chair, but other than that, I'll move that the report's noted.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Pickering. Councillor Barker.
Yeah, again, just to second it and reiterate what Steve said. Again, there's a local plan working group scheduled, I think, and I think we can discuss all this stuff. I think up to yet, that's been a really productive group. I think it's been, what's the word? Conducive, or better. There's a better word than that. But I think we're all working well together. This is going to be a difficult process. I think we can all accept that. But this is just an update that the planning team have to do, and it's just that the report is noted. So I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. I think with a local plan, I get the point that we need a local plan, otherwise speculative development can happen and everything else. But from the conversations I'm having and hearing out of that group, I fear that the south of the district is going to get hammered again. And that can't be allowed to happen. The south of the district, Tupton, Claycross, Wingworth, have been battered by housing over the last 10 years. And to have another local plan, which, you know, even some of the administration at the time were told to hold the nose, vote it through because it stopped speculative development, and it's not. And we've had, in my ward alone, we've had, well, we will have by the time they've finished, 1,000 new houses added to my ward alone, which is fine. You know, we need new houses. We need people to be moving into the area. We need to house families that are growing up in the area. I get that, supportive of that, as long as the infrastructure comes at the same time. But if what I fear is going to happen, which is particularly on the Wingworth side of the A61, as it meets up to Claycross, that whole area is going to be full of houses. That section of the A61, as we'll come on in a bit with the traffic lights motion, as well as all this feasibility talk that the mayor's coming up with, that area will be like a traffic jam. There's traffic lights on there now. I bet if you drove down A61 to Claycross now, you won't be able to get there. So what do you think it's going to be like when there's another 700, 800 houses at the side of A61? You're not going to be able to move. So I think the local plan working group, particularly the planning department, need to seriously consider this and not just ram through a local plan which hammers the south of the district like we did last time.
Councillor Thacker.
Thank you, Chair. I still think that if we're not careful, that we'll be, like lemmings, moving towards what we think is the inevitable. Because just talking about this is what the inspector might say, this is what government expects us to do, and so on, doesn't mean it's right for North East Derbyshire. And I still think that 600 houses is not the right figure, and I do feel that the group should continue to keep reviewing that and looking at how it could be possible. Now that we've talked about another way of getting additional second homes back into circulation and so on, there may be things that we could discuss. One thing I feel that we should be talking about in strong terms is that green belt is non-negotiable. We should not even be talking about the possibility of green belt being used in some way, shape or form. It's non-negotiable for various reasons. And one is that people are worried about communities merging into communities. We've already had local authorities bordering on North East Derbyshire who've made decisions that have put housing development right up to the line. We've seen that from Chesterfield Borough, we're seeing it from Sheffield and so on. I think we have to be very careful that we're not making decisions in greenbelt areas that are there to protect community identities. The other thing that's not in this report, we've talked about areas of outstanding beauty and nature and biodiversity and so on, is that in the neighbourhood plans that were drawn up when we were told that that was the way to go, one of the things that we looked at was areas of archaeological and historical interest. And we've got plenty of those in North East Derbyshire that we could consider to make sure that they're protected as well and that they're not encroached on and that their character is changed or damaged for future generations. This is a district that is well known for its beautiful nature and its rural character. And if we're not careful, we're going to allow a local plan to take us down a road where all of that is destroyed. And that's my concern. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cupit.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, would just note my thanks for welcoming the update paper and also the local plan working group meetings. I think, as Councillor Barker said, I think they are productive and conducive, so I appreciate you allowing us on. I know there's a lot of teeth gnashing. I know, yeah, exactly. I think though, because this is the only opportunity we really have to discuss it at council, I just wanted to raise the point, and it picks up where Councillor Thacker's raised, particularly around paragraph 3 of the report and around this target and basically what the local plan's working for. Now, I don't seek to delay in any way the local plan progressing through. I think that's right. I think it's right that we're moving at speed. And I know we'll be progressing to the proper sites consultation, and that doesn't really matter in terms of the numbers. So again, not seeking to delay that. But I do worry, and it's contained within the report at section 3.2 and the following ones, that we are sleepwalking towards accepting a target of 600 per year. And that is of serious concern to me. And I know that the report outlines that it's a bit of a chicken and egg, but I think we're in danger of accepting 12,000 new chicks, to take that analogy, and them all swamping the district. Or lemmings, yeah. Because it will be too late to back off from the 600 if we don't make a conscious decision not to do it. Now, it's not about opposing new homes, because at the very least we'll be accepting 300 new homes a year, because we've shown we can deliver that, and we'll be doing that. So that's a minimum of 6,000 new houses that the district's got to plan for, and that alone, as we've seen from the last local plan in the last decade, is a significant amount, and it's a significant amount of sites that we have to try and plan for. So it's that in itself is a daunting thing. But part of the last consultation questions, and I know that isn't contained within this report, I hope it's not consciously, of those 900 replies, I think it was about 85%, probably more, probably everybody other than the developers, if I'm honest, were clear that they wanted the council to go for a lower target than the 600 homes per year, i.e. the 12,000 allocation. Now, I don't discount the expert advice referenced in the report, but I think there's a lot more factors to consider to make the case for a lower target. It might not necessarily be the 330, it might be slightly higher than that, somewhere in between, than have been referenced. You know, we have the Peak Park, we have the Green Belt, we have demand, we have previous delivery. I'm also not convinced, as Councillor Thacker says, about some of the threats that have been mentioned, both in terms of government intervention, because I think that everywhere is going to struggle with some of these numbers, bar the cities, and so I don't think that government will be able to intervene everywhere, and that's not a political point. They just won't be able to intervene. And if they do want to intervene, they could perhaps intervene in somewhere like Islington in London, where they've built started less than 20 houses last year, in severe contrast to what North East Derbyshire has. So I think that, and I agree, the issue of speculative development has to be considered, but I'll be honest with you, 12,000 houses being allocated is pretty much up there with speculative development in terms of what can happen to this district, and will change the district for the future. And I know that, you know, just speaking to some of my residents about what's coming down the track, they saw the consultation and the draft sites last year, and they're just overwhelmed, because this isn't just one or two sites around a village, which it causes their own issues. This is literally whole swathes around some of the villages in my area and in my ward, which is of significant concern. So just to move to a sort of conclusion and a way forward on this, I think I want to try and push the council to stop sitting on the fence and trying to sort of straddle both horses in terms of, can we go for a lower target? No, but we better prepare for 12,000, because I think that we're in danger of the fence being crushed by the 12,000 houses. So, chickens, yeah. So if the monitoring officer will allow me, I would like to propose an additional recommendation to this report, alongside noting it, worded as such, hopefully carefully, that Council requests that Cabinet consider commissioning a full briefing note on the options available, including evaluating any risks of doing so, to the Council to pursue a lower annual housing target than the new National Standard Method in its new local plan, with the report coming to a future local plan working group meeting for consideration. And I'd like to move that as an additional recommendation to support the report. I can see Sarah's looking perplexed.
I am.
I'm happy to second it, Chair.
Thought you might be.
Hey there, Martin.
I think we're going to have to go ahead with it.
Sorry?
I think we're going to have to say yes.
Bring that to next week.
I think we have got, yeah, it seems
Working
more
not
sensible
far
to
away
me to...
next week, I think.
I think, Chair, if I could just clarify, I appreciate what you've spoken. I think the point is to put a definite process in place, because we've spoken about this in depth at local plan working groups. I've raised concerns, but it doesn't seem to sort of go anywhere or a decision be reached. So I'm keen to, as I say, get the council off the fence, and I'm not asking them to jump off the fence today, but I'm trying to put a clear process in place by which both Cabinet can steer. That's why I've asked for Cabinet to make the final decision on the briefing note, but that we make sure that it comes to the local plan working group, and then obviously hopefully in due course to council, to have a full consideration of the risks and the options in terms of that lower housing target. So I just want to make sure, I know we've discussed it in depth, but I want to make sure that that process is fully in place. So it's not a politically motivated amendment, but so hopefully you can accept it.
I'm just going to bring Councillor Gillett in.
Chair, I saw the monitoring officer face, which suggests she's got some doubts, but I have a lot of sympathy with what's been said. What I would like to suggest, if the leader's prepared to do, is if you just withdraw your motion, we'll take it away and have a proper look at it. There might be a bit of extra funding available if it's going to cost some money because of the decisions taken early, if it needs a bit of money as well. But if we can look at reducing the number, I think we should. I can tell you that some of us have been pushing that, and we've had pushback from officers, as the cabinet members outlined, to say these are all the risks. But if there is something in what you're saying, I think we'd be foolish at least not to consider it. And we could do that without your amendment being pushed and causing the monitoring officers some problems. We'll give you an honest answer. And if the answer is not what you like, then I'm sure you'll raise it and have a go at it at the next council meeting.
The problem is, Chair, and again, just to clarify, I can't bring this into council because obviously it's under current consideration. So I think I'd like to stick with proposing the amendment because it does just obviously request that Cabinet considers it. It doesn't commit the council to doing it. It just puts a formal request that council is concerned about this and so asks Cabinet to consider it. So as part of that, obviously Cabinet could consider if there's any costs. So it doesn't necessarily have to be private advice. It's up to you. But yeah, I think we'd like to stick if the seconder still sticks.
Can we, Sarah, look, is there any guide?
I think, in spite of my face, I think we're going to have to accept the amendment if it's seconded.
I'll second it, Chair.
Just clarify, Chair. So you just ask it, just read it out, only written first 3 words.
Yeah, do you want me to just read it out again? That Council requests that Cabinet consider commissioning a full briefing note on the options available, including evaluating the risks, to the Council in pursuing a lower annual housing target than the new national standard method in its new local plan, with the report coming to a future local plan working group meeting for consideration.
Yeah, that's fair. I can live with that.
It's considered.
Yeah. We consider it at Cabinet, so it's not asking this council to...
No, it's asking you to...
No, I think that's fair.
Right, do we need to vote on that?
No.
Can we just adopt that, can we?
Does anybody want to speak on the amendment, Chair?
Does anybody wish to speak on that? Councillor Dale?
I'll happily just say a few words in second, Chair. I mean, Charlotte's articulated it very, very well. The meetings of the local plan steering group have been very constructive, and we have sort of discussed this to an extent already. Unfortunately, it was the bit that I was late in arriving for because I had car issues, I think. So I missed most of the discussion on it, but I know that it was a good discussion on it. And there are definitely risks. I think from my perspective, there's the risk of speculative development on sites that are likely to be taken forward because of the additional time it would take. And I think this is what David would say. But for me, that's on sites that are likely to be taken forward in the local plan anyway. They may come forward earlier. We may get a few hundred, houses earlier than we were planning to, but against the risk of an extra 6,000 houses on top of what we've currently been building out at for the past however many years, which already feels very high, I feel like the risks are, there might be risks that are worth having a go for. So yeah, I would support the suggestion that we at least have a full discussion of it, and it obviously gives full cabinet the opportunity to consider the way forward, and full council can have its discussion around it at the appropriate point when we next have this version of this report coming back. So yeah, happy to support, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Just raised sort of the same concerns that Ross has raised, but with addition, totally agree with what Martin's been saying in terms of Greenbelt, but I think we also have to be conscious, and this is why we shouldn't be rushing stuff through, is the erosion of the settlement development limits. We're already seeing Wingworth, Tupton and Clay Cross pretty much merging into a single entity, which nobody wants. We are all separate communities, and the local plan does need to reflect the needs of those communities, and which I have raised when we've been in the consultation ones, because I've been approaching it from a parish one. Again, what failed in the last local plan, and which we really need to make sure doesn't this time, we have a single secondary school in the south of the district, which means every single development in the south ends up pushing more traffic through Tupton, and it is not sustainable. And none of the feasibility studies have taken that into account, and they need to. We've got to address it because we cannot cope with the traffic there. So that is a key issue that needs to be taken forward when we do it. And fully agree, and I respect Nigel for taking it on board straight away, but fully agree with what Charlotte said as well. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Liggett.
Thank you. I'm well aware of the speculative development, but I'm also greatly concerned about, because of the rush, the suitability of some of the sites. And I really do believe that I'm hoping the planners will listen to local residents, because yet again we've had 2 residents this week flooded, purely and simply down to new developments and attenuation ponds not working properly. And this is what worries me about the rush for sites, because we are building on land that should never have been built on. So that's I just want the planners to listen to us just for once, please, because it is extremely distressing when you are just being passed from pillar to post and everybody is blaming somebody else and no help is forthcoming to residents who, as I speak, have been on the phone to me this afternoon in floods of tears. So I just want you to realise that there are real people out there and it matters where we put in these houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose, like everybody else, when we first had this announcement of the increased number of houses, I was totally shocked. I mean, I were of the opinion that 300 a year were too many for North East Derbyshire, and when they doubled it, it was a shock. And I don't think anybody in this room today would oppose less than 600 if that's what we were looking at. What I keep stressing is it's not an easy option. It's not an either or. You can't just say we want less because we want less. The government set the bar really high. They expect it to be 600. I know we don't have to go with government expectations, and you know, challenging that at times is right, and it's been proved through history. But we do have to have robust evidence for it. Otherwise, it'll just be thrown out. We'll end up with no plan at all, which is a poor situation to be in. You know, it would cost a fortune. We'd be challenging nearly every planning application. If what's being suggested contributes to good evidence and we can put that forward, that's where we need to be. It needs to be robust. Yes, we've had some expert advice already saying we're not in a very strong position to do that. If through, you know, Cabinet considering something else, we can get that robust evidence, I'm quite happy with the amendment. If it works towards doing that, you know, I'm quite happy to try anything we can to do that, to support North East Derbyshire. So I'll be supporting that amendment, Chair. I think it's the right way to go. Let's have a look at that and see where we go. But the bottom line is it has to be robust, really strong evidence. It's not something because we desire it. It won't be accepted. But if this helps achieve that, then let's see where we go further down that line.
Yeah, a second, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know what we're doing, Sarah?
Yeah. The recommendation is on the report at page 92. We'll take a vote on that with the amendment that's proposed by Charlotte included. Yeah. Everyone happy with that?
I've written it down. Have you got it, Sarah?
No.
Council requests Cabinet to consider commissioning a full briefing note on options, including risks in pursuing lower housing targets, with that then going up through to local plan working group, roughly.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's unusual. Unanimously carried.
Take a photo.
Right, we'll move on to item 11, which is the avenue update. So I'm now going to hand you over to Matt Broughton, who's going to give us an update on this. Oh, sorry. You're announcing this, so you're introducing this. Sorry about that, Jane.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, before we go over to Matt, who's just about to give you present a comprehensive update on the Avenue regeneration project, I asked for this item to come to today's agenda. Members will know that on previous occasions and more recent times, the Avenue and the Mill Lane junction have been discussed in this chamber several times. The Avenue is a district and regional priority regeneration project. It's also the home of this council. While a significant amount of work has already been delivered, there is still much to do if we are to finish the job and realise its full potential for our communities. When I saw Councillor Shipman's motion, again relating to the Avenue, I felt it would be helpful to bring forward an update today so that all members have a full context and clarity that they need. As colleagues will be aware, this topic is often raised without complete information, which has at times led to confusion. It's important that the Council is properly informed rather than debate taking place in a vacuum. Amongst other things, this presentation will give you an insight and an understanding as to why improvements to the Mill Lane A61 junction are proposed. The Council, working with partners, must continue to deliver the aspirations of the AASF and our local plan, ensuring that the growth and regeneration remain aligned with the long-term needs of the district. And if at the end of this people would like a copy of the presentation, I'm sure we could arrange for people to have a copy. So I'm going to hand over now to Matt. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah. Screen-wise. Yes, perfect. Right, I will be very brief because I'm very aware of time too. So again, the update today is about the Avenue in its entirety, not just a small element. However, we will touch on the consultation responses, I'm sure. So the Avenue started really in 1999 when it first came in public ownership, and those are some images from both pre that time and then around that time that Homes England took. One of the most polluted sites in Europe, and severe industrial legacy issues, which was part of the reclamation project. So Homes England did the reclamation project first and foremost, a nationally significant brownfield regeneration project, as recognised by the government. 98 hectare site with severe pollution, unprecedented scale, so open tar lagoons, cyanide, arsenic poisoning materials on site, lots of nasty stuff, and then major environmental cleanup. So some statistics there for you: 2 million cubic metres soil processed through treatment plants, a waste tip excavated with 300,000 cubic metres of material in there, just to give you a feel for the scale. And then in 2013, the council took the decision to move here at Mill Lane to the Avenue, and the main decision around that were about the long-term ambition to unlock the Avenue. So this parcel of land that we're on was the only part of the Avenue that wasn't in private sector ownership, so public sector ownership, sorry. So us acquiring the site put it into public sector ownership and allowed the monies to support the further works. So the disposal of Council House generated a capital receipt which was used to, so if you look at the before and after, the top one there was when North East Derbyshire acquired, and then the one in the middle is shortly after and clearing out you'll remember words, those are around a blue billy and asbestos clad materials. And then what it also did is opened up access to funding like One Public Estate, where on the bottom right hand side there, that's a boundary blind master planning with Homes England. So we're able to, because there's no public, it's all public ownership, we're able to plan a development and regeneration boundary blind. So at the end of that, so this would be around 2014, the end of the reclamation phase, and then you'll know from your own seeing the site now, so from the north, then the development is creeping down towards the southern access. There I've just highlighted the council's ownership, including Pioneer House, which was always in the council's ownership. So I talk about the development creeping down. So that means down bottom right there is a view from my office. So that's where the developments come up to at the moment. And then phase 3, as Homes England refer to it, the one that's top right there, Strata Homes are now on site, delivering that phase. And I've just put some key numbers up from their development, 217 homes, 31% affordable, and a 28 hectare site. So what's driving all of this? So all this is driven from the Avenue Area Strategic Framework, agreed by multiple partners, and it's a supplementary planning document. So SPD is they're referred to, which are a material consideration in local plan. And the vision set out in the AASF that we're trying to deliver, a mixed-use development, transport solutions for pedestrians, cyclists and buses, a range of house types, a community hub, and high-quality design throughout. And then the land users, so a lot of the development, if not all of the development at the moment, other than the park, is housing. So 1,100 new homes were envisaged at that time. Obviously, that's a forecast. It might be slightly more, slightly less at the end. 10% of the area being employment users, and that's something I'll touch on later in questioning demand. So employment users in the planning senses, offices, industrial units. So with the changes in office provision and working from home, is there still demand for that scale? So something we'll pick up on later. And then it identifies community facilities and shops, which clearly aren't on site at the moment, and public open space and landscaping, which is significant and largely delivered. So the southern gateway. So if I just draw your attention to the right-hand side, that's straight out of the AASF. So you can see, hopefully see there, the two purple dots on the A61, broadly access points for the primary access corridor through. So if you imagine a bus, where a bus would go, it was always envisaged to come down the northern access and through the site and then back out, and all the development functioning around those two accesses. So that's why we talk about southern access. A roundabout was suggested in the AASF and early considerations, and you can see there, so that were around 2018. There was a planning application in for a roundabout on the A61. And what is clear that it could roundabout can provide adequate traffic capacity. So why was it ruled out as a preferred option, the roundabout? Well, through work with highways consultants, traffic signals are the optimum solution. So from a highway safety point of view and a technical view, and Derbyshire County Council's highways team, this is a quote from the highways team about Having reviewed the modelling output report, we would concur with the findings that the optimum solution would appear to be a signalised scheme. Obviously, there are other difficulties with the roundabout, so the size and scale. So land assembly wise, it needs a considerable amount of third-party land. Poor pedestrian and cycling controls on a roundabout, and cost similarly. A roundabout, I mean, from an above ground point of view, a roundabout can look insignificant if you think about services and certainly the location of the BT units with the fibre optics. It's a significant cost towards the roundabout, estimated at £7 to £8 million, plus land value. That's just a nominal figure just to provide just some context. So in terms of a cost of a roundabout versus a traffic signal solution, it's also a consideration. How do we know this? So through Section 106 funding, we funded WSP, and just a bit of feedback to them. I'm not too convinced about their logo, but that does say WSP, and they are highways consultants who are working with through ourselves, because we hold the Section 106 monies, but with Derbyshire County Council too, on doing all the modelling. And this is just a list of the things that that they've been asked to do. So then we go on to the EMCA funding. So Derbyshire County Council submitted a brief in consultation with ourselves, and we inputted in that, and the WSP work inputted into that too, for funding to do the traffic proposed traffic light solution on Mill Lane. And then these are the reasons that EMCA support that. I think the strategic fit is the key one. So it meets their housing growth, economic development, sustainable transport and brownfield regeneration solutions. So we've had a discussion in this council chamber around who's doing the consultation, why is the North East Derbyshire doing the consultation, isn't it a highway scheme, and vice versa. So this is the minutes from the cabinet meeting, and you can see that the EMCA funding is a decision of Derbyshire County Council to accept or decline that funding, and still a decision that's not taken yet. But in there, you can see on number 3, request that the relevant district council carry out consultation in respect of the avenue. So that's why we did it, and I think the question was around why haven't we published the outcome, and I think I'd sat here and said, well, we've been asked to do it, so I'd prefer to give it to the organisation that have asked us to do it first before just publishing it. So just to clarify. So what was in the public consultation, so it were largely these 3 slides. I think there was a bit of a supporting video as well. And the proposed option that was put forward by ourselves that we were consulting on was traffic lights at Mill Lane with vehicle detection at Nottingham Drive, so not traffic signals, but detection under the road. And then you can see other things are in there: conventional roundabout, double mini roundabout, traffic lights on a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. And this metrics is RAG rated, so the more greens, the more supported. So the public consultation outcomes, so there was high engagement, 451 responses. Key point was a majority wanted change, so 68% of people supported some form of intervention, a clear rejection of do nothing. Unsurprisingly, safety is a top concern, 52.3%. 73% of people supported a reduced speed limit from 50 to 40 miles an hour. However, it is worth saying, along with that information, the traffic monitoring suggested that traffic travels through this stretch at 40 miles an hour in general anyway, so not a speed reduction specifically for this patch in terms of lived experience. Feedback was raised about the proposal, so 65% of residents took part in the survey opposed the proposed option, so that's the traffic lights with vehicle detection on Nottingham Drive. And concerns centred around signal sequencing, peak time flows, pedestrian access, and including signals on Nottingham Drive. You can see here 24% of respondents were really keen to see signals on Nottingham Drive. So what the overall message that the council took from that, and other people might take a different view, the council took from that was most objections were to the specific design, not to the intervention itself. There was support for the intervention itself, and strong public mandate for safety improvement and control crossings. So, like anything, when we have a public consultation, we respond to that and develop a design. So, further design's been done and still in production with consultation responses in mind. So, reconfirming the signalised junction is still the positive, even with the change in design. It's still the preferred option. We applied the reduced speed limit because that had been supported by residents. Inclusion of Nottingham Drive, so that I don't think you'll be able to see it on here, but the junction signals at both Mill Lane and Nottingham Drive on this proposal, and then a crossing island, reducing the 50 to 40 allows, technically, I don't know how, but it allows for an island, crossing island to be put in. Key point, so this is where we were in December 2025. Key point is this still isn't agreed with Derbyshire County Council's Highways team, although they're developing that, they're around the table whilst that's been developed, but it's not been agreed by Derbyshire County Council's Highways team as yet. And then the next steps for the junction, and I've put Derbyshire County Council's logo up there because they are largely Derbyshire County Council's decisions. So, considering how the junction improvement links with the A61 master plan that's recently been announced, and we know the two different things really. One's long-term strategic, and one is a junction improvement on a corridor. Decision required to accept or decline the EMCA funding. Finalise the design. And get that agreed with Derbyshire County Council, and that design works funded through Section 106 monies. Further consultation is required. We're not clear whether there's a statutory consultation required or not. That's still being considered. And then delivery of the junction improvements. And for all of these if, buts and maybes in terms of decisions, it means the delivery timescales are unclear until those decisions come in. The other thing that we're doing at the moment on the avenue, so we've spoken earlier about the demand for employment land. So what's left in terms of land ownership, and this is what this diagram largely does. So that collection of land ownership, undeveloped, although it does include council officers on that, so I need to be clear, and there's no proposal to redevelop the officers, is Homes England and North East Derbyshire District Council. That's the remaining landowners. So we collectively are going out to the market to test what the market would deliver on there and compare that against the local plan and whether there is demand for that level of employment land. So if you think about that as industrial and office-based land, is there a market for that or not? Because we've got the ability with the local plan to, if it's informed properly, to change that, and it might be more retail, it might be another solution. And then the final slide, just to summarise really, so it's a 26-year project to date, and there's probably another 10, 15 years that Strata Homes development's probably likely to be 5 years in terms of delivery. So we're on a journey as a council here, and the journey is about how do you reclaim and regenerate a former coking works. And all these people and organisations, irrespective of what political colour they were at the time, have all been involved in this process. And happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Barker.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And as Jane said in the introduction, I think
You're not on, just on.
Matt. Blocking me, mate. Thanks for that, Matt. Yeah, I think it's important, like Jane said in the introduction, that before we get to the motion that's on the agenda, that all members are fully briefed on the history to this site and the significant regeneration of the district on that site. I've got a big copy of this Avenue Area Strategic Framework. It's got Jeremy Kenyon's name on it. You left it on desk. 2013 that, and as you can see, it's quite a weighty document. That's been on the table for a long time, and there's always been that aspiration to have a northern and southern access onto that site. I'm sure we'll come back to it when we're debating the motion, but we've been applying for funding through the County Council, East Midlands Regeneration Board, or everywhere back then, and Homes England, everywhere. We've been trying to get money to deliver this access for a number of years. And to be honest, I thought we'd done really well to get the £1 million from MCA, and I think the previous administration can take credit for that. I think to get that money from MCA, because everybody's trying to dip into that pot, and we got our share. And also, we tend to forget that this money came from the economic development pot from MCA, not highways, not anywhere else. It's to develop what's left on that side, wherever it is. Where am I pointing? And that's what it's about, this is. If we can deal with this highway safety and other stuff as well as, that's great. But from my perspective, I think it'd be a travesty if we lost this money and ended up not being able to develop this part of the Avenue site after all what's gone into getting it to where it is. I think Betty Hill has have a story to tell on that one. But I'll leave it at that, because I'm sure we'll revisit all the arguments when we debate the motion. But I felt it were important that we got the full context in front of everybody before we start the motion, when we've got limited times to speak and everything like that. Thank you.
Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. Just to correct the leader on something he's just said there, because it almost sounded like you were misleading the council. The southern entrance can happen anyway. It doesn't need a set of traffic lights to create the southern entrance. The southern entrance goes on to Mill Lane. It doesn't go from Mill Lane to Derby Road. So what the motion about is next is whether the traffic lights are the correct solution for that particular junction. It's not whether we agree or disagree whether there should be a southern entrance. I think there should be a southern entrance, actually. But that's not what the motion is about next. Interested in that presentation, there was a quote from DCC that said that they thought the traffic lights were the preferred solution, which anybody that went to that consultation open day, DCC were very explicit that they would love to put a roundabout in, but it wasn't feasible because they'd have to purchase the land and then pay for the roundabout. They never said that the traffic lights were the preferred decision. They just said that was the feasible one. So I don't know how old that quote is, but that can't be recent, because they wouldn't have said that unless there was misleading people on the day during that consultation process, because everybody that was there, in terms of any DDC officers, whoever the consultants were, and DCC all said that the roundabout was the best solution that they could have if they could afford it. But clearly, the traffic lights seem to be a particular route they want to follow. So that's the one question there. How old's the quote and what context was it said in? The other thing is that I had to laugh when the stats come up about how many percentage of people oppose the traffic light solution, and then your next words were, but we've took it as though they weren't opposed to the traffic lights, we've just decided that they meant something else. People, if you read the consultation results, they were absolutely against the traffic light scheme. It weren't what colour traffic lights were or whether they should be 10 feet in front or further down A61. They hated the traffic light solution, and yet the council sounds like they're pushing ahead with a traffic light solution. When is this council going to learn to start listening to people that it's asking views of? Because it sounds to me like it's, well, we'll ask them, and then when they tell us something we don't like, we'll still carry on anyway, and we'll make something up and say, well, we took it as this. That's bonkers.
Do you want to respond to that, Matt? Yes.
I can't get in. There's a queue.
You're on.
Is mine? Am I on?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Great. I can't. Can we put slides back up, Martin? Is there any chance? So that was the consultation in terms of optimum. What? So that Derbyshire County Council quote is a Derbyshire County Council quote that's been provided to us through emails. It was in a report in February 2024, I think it was. So it's an old quote, but it was in a report in February 2024. But you can see from here what the preferred option is in the consultation. So in the room, I wasn't in the room, and I'm not suggesting that you're leading us down a garden path. I don't believe that for a minute. But that's what the consultation was in terms of what the preferred was.
That, though, in the context of it's the only affordable solution. Right? You know what I mean? It's what could be afforded, and it's not necessarily.
That's responding to you.
So in terms of that isn't all about affordability. It's more than that. I'm not going to propose to read it out, but it isn't just about affordability. And then, sorry, second point. I didn't get that one.
Was it the quote?
No, that was first point.
It was about the why the council took out of the consultation that it's not the traffic light scheme that people are against, that it's something else.
So we consulted on a preferred option, and then people responded to say that the 65% didn't agree with the preferred option. That's what it says.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Matt. Useful. Just a couple of questions. I'm just so the most recent iteration of what's proposed. I'm just trying to fully understand. Are we saying it's a four-way signalised junction with Derby Road, Mill Lane, Nottingham Drive, and how has that progressed since the proposals that were consulted on? What's changed about it? I guess because I couldn't quite understand that bit. If that's okay.
So the original proposal was signalised junction on Mill Lane and then some sort of sensor under the ground, so no signals on the junction itself, but sensors under the ground, so the signals can see that traffic is there. This solution progressed following feedback, as Councillor Shipman rightly says, this is two traffic lights on two junctions with the ability to cross in the middle, enabled by the reduction in.
But it's two sets of traffic lights. So if you're driving along Derby Road, you'd have to potentially stop to let someone out of Mill Lane, and then potentially drive a tiny amount further and stop again to let someone out of Nottingham. It's not what I'm saying. It's not one four-way traffic lights. It's two sets of traffic lights.
That's my understanding, and that's what's proposed on here.
Okay.
However, not agreed with
DCC
Highways in terms of response to consultation. Is it technically possible? Can it be delivered?
And sorry to keep going, but the previous proposal then was for just traffic lights on Mill Lane with some sort of vehicle centre then that would allow people out to Nottingham Drive and give them priority over Mill Lane, basically. Yeah. Okay. And then the second question was just, have we had any? Because obviously, I sort of agree with Ross in that it feels like the signalised junction is maybe the kind of the thing we have to do to allow that to be unlocked in terms of the development. You have to have some form of intervention, but the preferable intervention, I think, all round would be a roundabout. So have we had any more dialogue with the landowner? And I'm thinking on the basis that now we have an alternative that is technically possible, that sort of, because obviously there's a ransom strip issues, that kind of weakens their negotiating position, because we do have an alternative, albeit it might not be popular with residents. So I just wondered if there'd been any further discussions with landowner to say, you know, we have this other solution, but actually it'd be preferable all round if we could deliver a roundabout. What's your position now, sort of thing?
We haven't, because so the optimum solution from a technical point of view is traffic lights. I know the origin was a roundabout envisaged in that, so that was triggered from the AASF. But when the design work and the traffic counts and everything else in terms of highways design rather than aspirational in the AASF, a traffic signalled junction was the optimum solution, supported by work from WSP and then supported in this comment by Derbyshire County Council. So there are issues in terms of cost. So land, without land, and you know, who knows what the land value is to be negotiated, but without land,
it's still 7 or 8 million.
You're talking £7-8 million. Largely, it's about works under the ground more than anything that you have to do to disturb services and the BT cables and the things like that. Yeah.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question was on the same sort of lines as Councillor Dale's. Just for more clarity on what actually was proposed, that map you've got up there, and thank you for taking the time to speak to me last week.
Thank
it's
you.
Much appreciated, where I had a little preview of this. One of the real costs and loss of housing land is the link road that would have existed between the new roundabout and the Hall Road, or the road that's being built at the side of these offices. Yeah, which it shows on there. And that allows us to build more houses. If we don't build that, more houses can be put on that land. Is that correct?
So terminology, not us. It's not our land.
Right.
So it's land that a developer is in control of. So would that increase the numbers? Probably. Has there been a redesign that's gone through planning? I don't think so. So it's difficult to say until there's a permission in place and all of the things that go with that technically.
One thing you explained to me was the traffic that goes down Mill Lane will not go all the way down Mill Lane. It will come to these offices and go down a new road to be constructed on our frontage. Is that right?
That's all, again, we haven't got planning permission for that. That's the aspiration. That's always been the plan.
We're working towards.
In terms of access, you'll see yourselves as you come down Mill Lane now, access to the Phase 3 development, the Hall Road, is off of this access. So the construction traffic for the Hall Road will, for the next 5 years, however that's developed out, will come through that. That's because the intention is that's the loop that brings you back to the northern access.
And final question, in the new design, following up on Ross's potential motion later on, the HGV vehicles involved in the construction of this Phase 3 and the final phase, the employment land, and of course ultimately we might have the refuse vehicles here on a more permanent nature. Have all those vehicle movements been factored into or are being factored into the new design? What sort of timeframes have we got for the traffic movements on the new design, the design that's being worked on and finalised with DCC?
So the traffic modelling takes into planned development up till 2034, All of this area is planned development in the local plan. So all of that is taken in terms of the modelling.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Berkey.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of clarification, I think, for the criticism that Councillor Shipman made before. I think one of the previous slides that Matt showed us did confirm that 65% of the respondents were unhappy, my phraseology, were unhappy with the traffic lights. The next point that wasn't, there's no point there that was saying that we had ignored that or that had been, and it's not us, it's these consultants, and it's in liaison with Derbyshire County Council. But there was no comment in there that we were ignoring that. The next comment was that it was taken that most of the concerns were because of the safety issues around the area. So I don't see any problem there in the number that was quoted. The report, or the slide, which presumably is from the report, there you go, concerns centred on signal sequencing, peak time flow. It's not denying the 65%, it's just trying to explain what points those 65% of people were making. There's no problem in those two statements. They don't contradict, which was Councillor Shipman's criticism, I think. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gillett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr Burton for the presentation, which I think is really helpful, and it gives us some context and background to the motion we're about to debate and may influence people as well. But there's some slight conflicts between what you've told us and some of the assumptions in the motion itself, and I just want to make sure I understand those in my own mind before we get there, while we can ask you questions. And the motion makes the point about objections to it, and it does highlight that percentage figure. But I think you've made it quite clear that the other big percentage figure, and it's actually bigger than the figure of people who object to that particular scheme, is that the majority of those people who responded see that there's a problem in that stretch of the A61 around Mill Lane and Nottingham Drive, and want some form of intervention to make it safer both for vehicles, for pedestrians, but also to have the minimal impact on traffic flows at worst, and if possible to help speed up traffic flows. Have I understood that right?
Well, the 68%, the majority of people wanted change. So
They want something doing about the junctions.
Want an intervention, not specifying what intervention at that point. Them 68%. But yes.
I think your presentation is also helpful because the motion implies that other options haven't been seriously considered. And it asks us to look at, if we pass the motion, to look at other options seriously and give them due consideration. But I think what you've said to us is that the other options that the experts can think of have been considered. You've gone through them all and you've evaluated them, and the one that came out as from a highway point of view as the best option was the one that was consulted on. Doesn't mean it's the only option, but from a highway point of view that was the most appropriate one. I think you've also said that a roundabout is feasible, and when 10, 15 years ago when this was first looked at, a roundabout was deemed to be the best, or thought to be the best solution. But once the technical work was done, it actually turned out not to be the best solution, and that the other options were better. Have I understood that right?
Yes. In a short answer, yes. I suppose you can. It's a bit like any profession, isn't it? One person's highway position will be argued by another highways professional's position. But in terms of...
But the thing about this is our highway consultants have done that, and they've come up with that. We will hand it over to the Highway Authority, who have got their own experts. They will have a second opinion, as it were. If they disagree, they're the people to disagree. If they agree, then you've got two highway bodies, as it were, agreeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, it's Derbyshire County Council as the Highway Authority who will make a decision on this, not North East Derbyshire District Council. We just happen to hold the Section 106 monies that's funding the exploratory design works.
And funding, as you say, is key. One scheme costs just over £1 million there or thereabouts. The other can potentially cost up to £10 million. Obviously, this authority won't find that money under any circumstances. It's got to come from EMCA. And I'm guessing I'm probably closer to EMCA than you are because of the role I play on their scrutiny committee and the role I play on the transport side of that as well. chance of getting that money, I suspect, are pretty slim if we turn this down. So there is a serious risk, I think, of it's either something involving signalisation or nothing. And that might be the choice that ultimately this council has to take when it puts the recommendation forward. If there isn't any intervention whatsoever, what's the potential impact on that for the rest of the scheme that you've just outlined?
Well, if I suppose first and foremost, do nothing is not what the consultation suggested. In terms of the design, it'll be the same as it's been for the last 10 years. It's back to the drawing board. Can there be another solution when we're trying to deliver the ASF? So, yeah, this is the option that we've pursued, and through advice, this is where we've got to today.
So if we rule out signalisation completely today, it has some serious implications for the development of the rest of the site, and will at best delay it, even if it doesn't stop it completely.
Yeah, the capacity, the reason for doing this in the first place is about capacity on that junction to release and deliver the aspirations of the ASF. So Mill Lane, as it stands at the moment, hasn't got the capacity to deliver that aspiration for the ASF. So without it, it makes that delivery much more difficult.
And just one other very minor question. Councillor Baker said he's been to see you. That's good. That's what local members should do. I know when I've had problems in my patch, I've come to talk to you. I found you very helpful, even when you've told me things I didn't want to hear or agree with, but at least you heard me out. And have all the ward members involved actually come knocking on your door and asked to speak about it, and particularly the changes since the consultation was published?
Only one. I've spoken to one ward member on this issue, particularly very recently. In the past, I've spoken to others as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we've done that one today, haven't we? Right, thanks very much for your presentation, Matt. If you want to retake your seat. Right, we'll now move on to item 12, which is questions from members, which we don't have any today. So we'll now move on to item 13. There is one motion today proposed by Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. I might ask this.
Just a quick note that are we all right? Is everyone okay to go past the 5 o'clock if necessary? Yeah, because it's 10:02 now. Okay. Yeah, okay. Over to you, Councillor Shipman.
I might ask this motion about 10 times, see if we get a different answer every time I ask it. I've proposed this motion for the proposed traffic light scheme at the end of Mill Lane and A61 because, to me, as I mentioned earlier, it's grounded in an important principle in that local people should have a meaningful say on what happens in their area. So both Derbyshire County Council and NEDDC, as we've seen, it seems past the hot potato and who's responsible at this point now, but they've consulted on this scheme, and the results of that consultation were very clear to me. Around 65% of the respondents opposed introduction of traffic lights. That's not, they opposed any form of intervention, they specifically opposed the traffic light scheme. And if you look at one of the other results, 24% supported the traffic lights there at all. So this idea that we should be pursuing a scheme that's the main function of it is traffic lights is so bizarre to me. I don't understand the wanting of those traffic lights there when there's no public, well, there's a quarter of the people, percentage-wise, are in favour of it. The residents have raised serious and legitimate concerns. These include the likelihood of increased congestion on A61. Anybody that even drives up A61 knows any set of traffic lights will all be holding up traffic rather quickly. The potential safety issues, which is people have quite rightly raised, coming out of Mill Lane and Nottingham Drive, and traffic being displaced onto the surrounding residential areas such as Addington's or Elsing Approach. The these concerns come from people who use these roads daily, unlike the consultants who don't seem to really understand the area at all, because when they did the consultation, to me, when I spoke to them, it sounded like they'd not even took into account that the A61 is an alternative route when there's an issue on M1. They'd not taken into account the emergence of a new local plan, so they've used the one that's currently in place, not one that will be emerging, which will see, as I mentioned earlier, a lot more housing, I feel, is going to end up in the southern part of the district. So these are people that just haven't got a clue about the areas that they're trying to tell us need traffic lights. So proceeding with a scheme that lacks that public support risks undermining the trust in the consultation process itself. If residents take time to engage, respond and give their views, then they should quite rightly expect the District Council to listen to them and not just ride roughshod through their views when it's quite clear that they're against traffic lights at this junction. This motion does not argue that nothing should be done, and I've always said that something should be done, but what this motion calls for is that the traffic light scheme as proposed, and any traffic light scheme quite frankly, needs to be rejected now and not pursued and wasting more money on feasibility studies and changing designs and everything else on the traffic light scheme that nobody wants. So that's what I think we should do. We need to formally oppose this scheme. We need to write to Derbyshire County Council as the highway authority, because ultimately it's their cabinet that will take the decision on this scheme. And then we're sending a clear message that the consultation it has been meaningful, people have been listened to, and their voices do actually matter. So I hope members, although we've heard a presentation which to me is trying to push members down a particular route, I hope people understand and have realised that this motion isn't about stopping something being done there. It's about using some common sense and listening to the communities that we represent. So hopefully people will support the motion, and let's try and look at an alternative to traffic lights that no one wants.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second the motion. I think there's quite a few things that certainly I picked up when Matt Broughton was doing his discussion, and as Matt says, he wasn't there on the day. I was, and I can stand there and tell you, and I suspect Councillor Baker and Councillor Shipman, who were also in attendance, will say exactly the same thing. The people who were actually undertaking the consultation were giving very different things to different people, and even the same individuals were making different comments to different people. So you have to question the quality of the consultation that took place. It certainly wasn't I wouldn't consider it worth anything, to be truthful, in terms of what was put on there. I mean, the irony is we're talking about the £1 million from EMCA when that same organisation is about to spend £3.5 million on a survey as to why the A61 isn't moving. So, I mean, this is again part of the farce of this solution that's being offered. They're criticising traffic lights all the way along, and yet here we are supporting more of them, which is going to cause complications. The reason why the residents of Nottingham Drive were so in favour of traffic lights, if this was which, to be truthful, the way it was presented to them at the consultation was this was a fait accompli. There was absolutely no doubt about that. The residents of Nottingham Drive were, if there are going to be traffic lights on 3 points, we are going to be stuck, and they didn't have faith in the sensor system at all. So that's why they were quite ardent that if it did go, this is why we've now got the proposal that we have with the four-way traffic lights. So that's where that came from. Hang on, I'm trying to read my own handwriting here as I've gone through this. I think the other thing was, again, and I mean, we understand totally what Matt was saying, and this is kind of like the preferred option, but I think people, as I say, it was presented to them as a fait accompli. There were no other alternatives put to them in that consultation. And one of the things that was said over and over again is, what happened to the roundabout? That was without question the option that they preferred to go down. So, fully support this. As Ross says, it's not trying to throw spanners in the works, even though people are trying to present it as that. It's not saying let's try and pull the plug. It's saying let's go out and have a proper, legitimate, meaningful consultation, because what took place certainly wasn't legitimate. So, as I say, I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Liggett. Oh, Councillor Barker, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Am I on yet? Yeah, I'm on. After listening to what I've said, it's been no surprise to say that I don't think majority of our group were supporting this motion. I think the main reason being we've analysed the responses and we accept that 65% of the respondents didn't support the original proposal. Accept that, that's what it says in the paper. It also notes that 68% supported some form of intervention. So, and I've talked to people and the people that filled that consultation in, and for me, it was the Nottingham Drive issue was the main thing. The people at Nottingham Drive having to turn right from Nottingham Drive had got an issue. If you're not, why aren't you putting that into the mix? That's what people kept telling me, the people that opposed the original one. And also, another one, a big factor for me, is a safe crossing point, especially for school children coming off these new estates now, down here, that are going up to Deer Park and schools up in Wingerworth. They've got to cross that road. And if we can have a signalised junction that accommodates that, I think that's a good thing. And with that, we did the consultation. We then went back to WSP. It is a dodgy logo, Matt, isn't it? And we asked them to redesign the scheme. And I will point out that work was commissioned well before we saw sight of this motion, before anybody starts to try and take credit for it. And again, I think it's been alluded to earlier, if Councillor Shipman had been concerned, as he is now and all over Facebook, he could have talked to Matt and other officers to find out what was being proposed. When?
Ages ago.
Ah, exactly. Did you know about that proposal that's on the table now?
Yes. Yes, I did know.
Well, you've not come to talk about us.
That's the point. We need to reject it because it's terrible. And you're sat there supporting it.
I am supporting it because without that, we're not getting nothing. It's between this or nothing. The new proposal's taken in cognizance of all the consultation, what people want, what the concerns are, and we've come up with a different solution.
Councillor Shipman, it's Councillor Barker's turn to speak, not yours.
Thank you, Chair. And again, it's where we are. We're going about it wrong way round and bringing it to this meeting. There's a lot more to this thing to develop, to open up that site than just whether we have traffic lights or not, to let people pull out of that to Mill Lane Junction. So I think that the solution that's been presented, the new one, is ideal. So I will be voting against the motion in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liggett.
I realise I'm probably wasting my breath. I don't have anything to do with Wingworth, apart from the fact that my daughter lives here. She definitely voted against traffic lights. There are 4 islands between Chesterfield and Shirland, all of which work, 2 of which have worked for all my life perfectly adequately. Last week there was an extra set of traffic lights in Clay Cross due to roadworks. A 15-minute journey from Home Bargains home turned into a 45-minute journey. That was 1 extra set of traffic lights. And we all know how many roadworks there's been recently, and this has happened all the time, and that's without anything going wrong on the M1 and everybody coming through here. And I really don't believe that developers are going to not develop, because somebody, if they want to build houses, somebody will find the money for a roundabout to be put in. I just think it's absolutely crazy to try and add an extra set of traffic lights to the A61. But that's just personal opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Cupid.
Thanks, Chair. And thank you to Matt for the presentation. That was really helpful and useful. I'll be honest, I'm, with my previous highways hat on, I'm probably one of the more knowledgeable about the controversy of these sorts of schemes, but also, recognising the challenges as well. And do you know what? I am quite sympathetic to the motion. I agree that the consultation responses should be taken into account. I guess I have two major issues that primarily, I think, and this isn't picked up in the motion, the consultation was quite leading. And I'm not blaming the District Council for that, but it didn't really encompass other views or allow people to feed in other suggestions. It was consulting on the traffic light scheme as proposed, and that's not a blame of the District Council, because it was just what the MCA had given the money for. But it was therefore quite leading, and you couldn't really say what you wanted, because I filled it in, as a local resident, and I really struggled with it, because it basically said, do you support, can you rank active travel or road safety? It didn't really, or congestion, and you had to give them all a priority, even though you might not want to give a priority to some. And then it said, are you for or against traffic lights or not? And there wasn't really an option to say, oh, do you know what, I don't really want to do that. So, and there was also an issue in terms of the consultation was pretty much blind, because you had to put half your postcode in. So I do worry that somebody might have, who's quite passionate about the A61, which a lot of people are, might have filled in the consultation response 100 times or something like that if somebody was particularly dedicated. So given that, and then what we've heard today from the presentation about what's been proposed as an alternate scheme and basically making four-way lights with Nottingham Drive, I'm probably even more concerned now, because I think I think a solution is needed which incorporates both Nottingham Drive and Mill Lane, but I think that will bring the A61 to a standstill. It's been touched on, the issues that lights cause. We've seen in Clay Cross as well, when you have traffic lights in various places and roadworks for Severn Trent. I think it's going to be pretty disastrous trying to do four-way lights in this area. But I do struggle with the wording and the sort of resolution of the motion, and I don't think it's your fault, Councillor Shipman, because I think it's moved on almost since you've submitted the motion, because the motion suggests opposing the original scheme as proposed, but obviously doesn't really incorporate this new one. And again, we've got this issue where, to be honest with you, I think North East have been a little bit stitched up by DCC, because actually this is a DCC problem. It's their highway, it's the A61, they need to sort it, they're getting the money. So I think you've been very kind defending them, but you probably shouldn't be doing. So I mean, I'm really struggling in terms of supporting it, because I don't support the scheme. I think we should support the consultation responses against it, and I think there should be a wider, more open consultation, but I don't think it's for the District Council necessarily to do that. I think it's for the County Council. So I am struggling with the motion, so I think on balance I'm probably going to abstain, but I probably would ask or suggest whether there's a way to sort of pull the motion and rewrite it or defer it, to bring it into a more constructive manner, to say, look, we're really concerned about this new proposal that's been put on the table, and DCC, can you step up and can you form a working group, whatever it is, and a more open consultation? Because I just think the wording of the current consultation, the current motion, risks us signing up to something and basically chucking the baby out with the bathwater by opposing it. So I don't know if there's a way you'd be willing to defer it or put it on pause and reword it and rework on it, because I'm conscious that if we vote today, we then can't bring anything back in for 6 months.
Full council
in March. So that would be my suggestion, because I think we're all arguing a little bit over the politics, but I think we actually all agree here in terms of we need to find the right solution. We need to do an open consultation, and we need to find the right solution for all the residents in that area. So that would be my suggestion, but if we proceed to a vote, I will abstain on that basis.
Councillor Dale.
Thanks, Chair, and I agree largely with Councillor Cupit. I think the trouble with the motion is that things have moved on, and I would say possibly not for the better. I think the additional set of lights, it's not even like a four-way lights, we're talking about 2 sets of independent traffic lights on the A61. I can't help but feel that traffic consultants will say a lot of things, and get paid very handsomely to do so. But I can guarantee none of them will live in Wingleworth or anywhere around the area to sort of understand what it's like locally. So, I really think.
Alex, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Matt just wants to bring, I think, a point of clarity into it.
Yeah, point of clarity in that.
Let your mic come on, Matt.
Sorry, I'm in the queue, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not putting too much weight on that design.
Yeah,
because it's not an approved design.
Yeah.
I answered the question to try and help the debate. It does include Nottingham Drive, technically what that does and how that works. I don't want you to rely too much on that in the room.
Understand, and I think that's a fair point. And I can't help but go back to thinking that the roundabout is the best option, and I think Councillor Liggett was absolutely right in, you know, we should look for developer funding. Well, it's not just us that's in this situation. Homes England are. You know, it's in everyone's interest to have a proper solution and not add to the congestion on the A61. So yeah, I think it would be too difficult to amend the motion at this stage, but I'd certainly urge the council to properly consult on any future options before you know, before deciding on anything, and yeah, consider again the option of a roundabout. Appreciating the cost is very significant, but it doesn't. I can't help but feel like that would be the best solution all round, given what we're facing at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with my two previous colleagues, and indeed we've discussed this. The motion, yeah, things have moved on. A couple of things within the motion, though, are meaningful. One is now we know there's a new scheme, and the new scheme is under development. The relevant ward members from the area who are involved should be involved in the discussion of how this evolves into its next phase. I originally wanted a roundabout there for obvious reasons, because the roundabout that exists further to the north, on the northern side of the access, works spot on. I go jogging along there regularly. It's the safest place to cross Derby Road just there. Nobody can speed on that roundabout because it's correctly designed. Crossing the road is minimised by that roundabout. But I accept the constraints of the land, the vast cost of land with potential housing development value. And I'm keen not to be seen to stand in the way of the development of the southern part of the site. In fact, the more houses you build on there and the less you build on the Greenbelt near our village, the better for me. So, with reluctantly, I'll have to abstain on this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Gillett.
Thank you, Chair. A few meetings ago, we had a debate about local government reorganisation, and one of the things I said is, having not wanted it in the first place, I'd become more of a convert to it because I felt that the current system didn't work. And I think this is potentially an example of that, where we have this council being made to act as a highway authority, and as has been pointed out, that's not our role. The highway authority not doing its job, pushing responsibility onto us, and not doing its role, and EMCA being a funding body rather than the delivery body, and it's reliant on the partners, i.e. the county in particular, to give it the information and make the funding bids. What is quite clear from the survey to me, the consultation, is yes, people were against a particular scheme, but overwhelmingly they want their elected representatives to do something to make it better. And the danger I think we really have now is we're being asked to choose between a scheme that's going to cost £1 million there or thereabouts and try and get funding for a scheme that might cost £10 million, where we're going to have difficulty putting the land package together. And if I was a funding provider and I am told there's two schemes available, one costs £1 million and that is the most optimal scheme anyway, the other one will cost £10 million and that is not as good as the £1 million scheme, that's going to be a real challenge to try and get that £10 million. And therefore, I have a real fear that if we're not careful, we will end up doing nothing. Now, the new scheme that was shown today, I think that's just an example. Nobody should read anything to do that. I think the principal purpose of it was to say that this council has heard the comments in the consultation, hasn't just ignored them, it's gone away and it's trying to look at alternative solutions. This is one of them. But this one has huge problems with it that I won't repeat, but others are outlined already. So in politics, it's hard. You have to take difficult decisions at the end of the day, but ultimately, you're elected to take those decisions and take the consequences of them. And if we're faced with the choice, and we might be, and I don't know whether we will be, but we might be faced with the choice of it's this or nothing, and I think that's a realistic choice that we might be faced with, what do we do? and ultimately we're down to Cabinet in the first instance, but finally down to Derbyshire County Council. So ruling out signalisation in any shape or form today, I think would just be failing the community, if I'm honest. It might get you some good clicks on your social media that nobody's listening to you, but it's failing the community. Politics is about listening. We are trying to take on board all the criticism and comments that were made, and if there is a way of doing that and coming up with a better solution, I am sure this council will do its best to do that. But sometimes you can't give people everything they want, and therefore you have to make a choice. And I do worry that, as I say, and I'll repeat myself, if we support this, we will let the community down and nothing will happen. And we've heard the consequences of that, not just for those junctions, which are bad enough as it is already, but for the development of the rest of this site and the consequences that has, which also feeds back into some of the debate we had an hour or so ago and has implications for that. So I would urge everybody to think really hard and long before you cast your vote in a few minutes' time and just vote against this motion. And obviously Cabinet will go away and think about it, take on board what's been said, and if there is an alternative solution, I'm sure we will look at it. But we have to be realistic. We have to take hard decisions at times, and this might just be one of them.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's just a bit of clarification, really. I understand everybody wanting to put a roundabout in and thinking the roundabout is the right solution to go forward, whether it is or not, because on one of the slides it shows that it's not. On others, other people have a different view. But we haven't got the land, have we, to put that roundabout in? So the land at the moment is in the hands of a developer and in the hands of a private person. So even if we did have the £10 million from somewhere, to do this, would that include the cost it would do for compulsory purchasing on that land? And could we do? I don't want you to answer me. I want the officers to answer me, please. Would that include the cost of that, or would that be over and above? Can somebody tell me, please?
Through you, Chair. Andrew, you might have to shout up if I get this clumsily wrong. So in terms of land value, that's whatever's negotiated, willing buyer, willing seller. In terms of CPO, that's a more difficult path, especially when there's an alternative solution. So part of the case for a CPO is it the last resort? Because what you're doing is you're compulsory taking somebody's asset from them. Andrew, am I right in that? So it's, CPO-wise, it's very difficult when there is an alternative solution.
So if we were, at the moment, my understanding is the person that owns the land isn't prepared to sell it. Am I right with that? So if we were to go down this road, he's not going to sell it to us, or she's not going to sell it to us. So therefore, the only option we would have would be to go to a CPO in order to get enough land to do a roundabout. Am I right?
Again, CPO, it's the CPO bit that's really difficult, and I don't think it'd be us as an authority, it'd be a decision for Derbyshire County Council as the Highways Authority. It would be very challenging, I think, in terms of when you've got an alternative solution that is deliverable without that piece of land. In terms of your question on landowners, for many years, and this administration and previous administrations will know that we've got engagement with the other landowners. We've spoken about many different options and variations of themes. So we've got those contacts. But obviously the pursuit of the traffic signals doesn't require that. So for a period of time, we haven't had that engagement, if that clears that up.
Right. I think everyone's done at last.
Done.
So,
thank you, Chair. I think to answer Councillor Barry's question, the answer is no. The council hasn't approached them recently, and therefore we don't know if they're willing to sell. But the figure on the slide halfway through was it's £2 million to purchase the land off them. That's what the slide said, didn't it? It was 7 to 8 million to do the works, 2 million to purchase the land.
Just clarify that.
Sorry, Chair, clarification. I think has said an indicative number.
Yeah.
Agreed with anybody. It's about willing buyer.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
If you're not a willing seller, then you know that might be increased, double, triple.
Yeah, and the compulsory purchase argument as well that's just been set out there, that yes, there might be an alternative solution, but if that alternative solution causes traffic to back up on A61 and causes other issues, then you could argue it's not really an alternative solution, can't you? Because it's like HS2, right? HS2 compulsory purchase loads of properties, but the route could have changed quite easily. They could have done it 100 metres to the right instead of straight through someone's property. So it's not the alternative route or solution that stops a compulsory purchase. It's whether there's a good enough argument to argue why you need to do it that way instead of another way, which is possible because we're already establishing that any traffic lights on A61 are an issue. I mean, you don't have to see it when there's some roadworks, they are an issue. And on Councillor Cupid's point about the consultation it being rather leading, I totally agree with that because it didn't allow people to put forward their views. But ironically, even though the consultation was very leading, people still rejected it overwhelmingly. So that should be a very good indicator that any traffic light scheme won't be acceptable. So to go back to Councillor Gillett's point in that we were doing a disservice to the residents, I'd argue that we're actually doing them a very good service by listening to them and delivering a scheme that they want. Doing something that they don't want is an absolute definition as a council of doing someone a disservice. We are there to represent the communities that we're elected to. We aren't there to go and say, oh, actually, 75% of you want this to happen? Nah, because I'm trying to serve you well, we're going to ignore you. That's just such a backwards way of thinking. And therefore, it's just, I mean, I'm sure Councillor Gillett's just trying to square peg round hole anything at this point for that Labour group, but there we go. And we've heard it from the leader's mouth that he's in favour of these traffic lights. So I would encourage him, if the leader is so in favour of these traffic lights, let's get them put in, and then you can follow me around canvassing on all residents in Wingworth, in my ward, and we'll see what they think of Councillor Barker's great idea of some traffic lights at the end of Mill Lane. Because I can tell you now, they kick your arse down Addington Avenue, because it's a stupid idea by the stupid administration with stupid consultants, and you need to stop ignoring residents like you keep doing. You did it over at Lido, you did it over local government reorganisation, and now you're doing it over at traffic lights at the end of Mill Lane.
Thank you, Councillor Shipman. Right, we're going to put the motion to the vote. Can put that up on the screen, please. Is that everybody? That motion's failed. Right, that's 18 against, 5 for and 8 abstentions. Right, members, I have no urgent business, so that concludes today's meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance.
Thank you, Chair.